What is up, RotoGrinders? Welcome back. NFL DFS week number 3. Usual suspects on no sleep. It's the Rainmaker himself. It's Sean Kemp. It's Kirkwood, Kirkdiese. You made it rain last week, right? With all your packs, they finally paid off.
You know, I'm bullish again on Rainmakers all of a sudden.
Why? You a sudden change of mind at 180. What happened?
Because I sucked out and won 2 tournaments on there. Which I thought
all your packs are paid for now, right? I guess. I don't know.
But I've been ripping more since. But yeah, I'm in a good spot. You know, except the fact that I didn't have time to make all my lineups. It takes hours to build Rainmaker lineups. It's ridiculous. It's crazy.
And you're on no sleep. And when we get off the show, you have an hour and 40 minutes to figure all your stuff out. So time is a commodity, man. What are you prioritizing? You prioritizing your main Yahoo lineup or your
and I also max entered that Yahoo, the baller one, so I got to prioritize those 2 things. I made some DK lineups. I probably won't go back to them and look, but I'll just start hammering Rainmakers right after the show.
As far as injuries, a lot of people are questionable this week. It appears most of them are going to give it a go. Most likely, Fournette's going to play. Gage, Perriman, Beasley, Cole Beasley. By God, that's Cole Beasley's music. He should be available today, at least for Tampa. Kamara expected to go. Jameis expected to go. Dobbins expected to make a season debut. UCF's own Gabriel Davis expected to be available. Swift should be good to go. Hockenson as well. Connor likely to go. Judy, for what it's worth. And Jacobs. Jacobs seemed like he thought he wasn't going to go because he missed the plane, but apparently he flew back out there yesterday on his own plane or a plane away from the team, and now he's likely to play. Herbert's the one that's kind of up in the air as far as the quarterback there for the Chargers. Vegas seems to suspect he's not going to play because that line moved, I believe, 3 points since that opened up. And Julio, we don't know about Julio just yet. One more receiver that kind of muck things up there in Tampa. Bobby Gomes joining us as well. A lot of injuries, Bobby. I thought it was going to be murkier, to be honest, and things can still change, obviously. Actives and inactives drop 11:30. Erik Beimfohr and SquirrelPatrol will be talking about that when they jump on in about 50 minutes or so. Bobby, how are you? As far as injuries, I guess it's a little cleaner than I suspected, assuming that Schefter and the boys, they're all correct.
Yeah, doing well. It's going to be an exciting slate. Waiting for the final injury report, and I'll be able to adjust from there and hopefully have a good week.
Yeah, well, we actually have really good players to play. All the good quarterbacks are available. We finally get the Bills in the main slate. The tricky part, Bobby, is that, salary cap. We're in the middle of salary cap concerns. And this is more of a DK conversation than is a FanDuel conversation. You're going to like your FanDuel lineups more than you like your DK lineups. That's just the way it is. If you like your DK lineups, your expectations are low because it's hard not to make a lineup that doesn't look ugly. It's different degrees of ugly. Maybe that's just me. What is your assessment here, the overall thought process as far as the slate, Bobby? Are you having a hard enough time making things work as I am? Like, we're talking about Matt Collins and Aguilar and possibly one of these terrible Tampa Bay receivers, some disaster running backs. Do you like the way your DK lineups are looking right now?
So I'm having a lot of issues at QB, but I think my overall process, like getting to the guys I want, is working out. But just whittling down QB is very difficult for everyone this week. So usually when that's the case, like I really try to condense my QB pool. I might even just lock one QB in the millie. Like that's kind of how I'm looking at it. Because I know that decision is so tough for people. So many people are going to spread it out. When they spread it out, I don't know, if you hit on the right one, like you're in a really good spot. I'll definitely not do that in other contests, but definitely I'm having issues with it, and I feel like everyone else is. So the main issue is like the ceiling for these lower guys can't really compete with the ceiling for the higher guys. And it's just so tough in tournaments to just be like, all right, who can I play here? So that's kind of where I'm at.
Do you know who that one quarterback would be? Or you're still kind of figuring out if you're going to lock somebody in?
I'm still kind of figuring it out, but I'm leaning Burrow.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, Cincinnati's kind of I don't like using must win, certainly not week 3, but they're up against it. 2 bad losses so far this year. You feel like there's a bounce back coming, a good matchup against the Jets. The problem with Burrow, he doesn't have the route that like Hurts can get there. He can move a little bit. Obviously, Lamar can move. Burrow can move a little bit, but he's not as stiff as like a Kirk Cousins or whatever. But he basically has to go 303, which certainly is possible. Kirkwood, you had a reaction there. Are you not a fan of Burrow? You said didn't seem.
No, I'm actually a fan. I actually love him. He's one of my favorite tournament plays of the week. But there's definitely a lot of risk there with potentially it being a Joe Mixon game, and there's also potential for some of these other rushing quarterbacks to actually have massive ceiling games. So it just kind of wowed me. I like it. I like it though. I like to put your junk right on the table with Joe Burrows. You know what I mean?
I mean, last week we had like the one big upside quarterback of Lamar, and he dropped the upside. Obviously, he was awesome. Tua rose as well, and I hate when like guys like Derek Carr are chalk. Like he has one route to get there, 303, 304, that kind of thing. He's not going to move at all, and of course he didn't get there. It's not playing results. That's just he only has that one path, and just like a guy like Kirk Cousins and Burrow somewhere in the middle, I suppose. And the other part is we have if it's not Lamar this week, then it's Josh Allen. If it's not Josh Allen, then it's Jalen Hurts. If it's not Jalen Hurts, it's going to be Patrick Mahomes. There's so many all the good quarterbacks are playing, so the opportunity cost has risen. Of course, the cap is tighter, and it's harder to get to these guys. How are you assessing these quarterbacks, Kirkwood? Because we're looking at as far as ownership, it's pretty flat, right? As it typically is. There's a lot of good options. Hurts and Allen around 10%, Cousins around 10%, Burrow around 8%, Stafford, he's more in that, Burrow Carr bucket, or he's got to go 303. Certainly he can against Arizona. It looks horrendous so far this year. Secondary is pretty rough in a dome as well. Your assessment as far as quarterbacks overall?
I like too many of these guys was the problem I'm having today. That's kind of why I said, wow. So, obviously I love Josh Allen. So, it almost looks too easy, right? Like we saw the game script with Miami last week, and the game just absolutely go bananas. And what was it, right? There was a ton of speed on the field, right? And there was a decimated defense, which was the Ravens. And you have the Bill, and you have the Raven. Lamar went nuts because the defense of Miami isn't so great. So it just has the same exact makings, right? Like the Bills' offense, I'm not scared that they're going to put up I'm not scared they're going to put up tons of points, and I'm not scared about that. And their defense is absolutely decimated, right? Their whole secondary is basically gone. Miami has two of the best weapons, and yes, it feels like we're chasing because of last week. I get that, but they have the two best yard after catch receivers probably in football right now with Waddle and Tyreek, and they got speed everywhere, and that's what we've been saying. And I'm pretty sure we touted them on the show last week. Maybe not hard enough, but we were like, Tua, these guys are yard after the catch monsters, and that's exactly what can happen. And so, that game I know people who bet on the under and in that game, and it was like, I was like, what are you doing? It's like, look at all this speed that's in the game. That's what I won the Rainmakers on. So maybe I'm a little biased here. But what it does, Josh Allen is going to, in my opinion, is going to go nuts today because their defense is probably going to give up a lot of points as well. And so I think it's just has the makings for all the shootout. Now, Jalen Hurts looks amazing, right? And has tons of weapons. And that's a game that could potentially go off. I'm a little bit worried about the Washington side, but not too much. The one that I'm kind of worried the most about here in the top range is everyone's playing is Kirk Cousins, right? Like because it's Detroit, and nobody's had more higher scoring games so far than Detroit. Their defense is absolutely atrocious. Their offense looks pretty damn good, even though it's Goff at the helm. But they got weapons, right? They got the Amon-Ra and Swift and just weapons all over the place. Reynolds looked good last week, but Cousins doesn't bring that rushing upside. But then and Lamar, obviously we can always use Lamar, but it's New England. But then I keep coming to two places. One, I feel like Stafford isn't going to get played enough, but like Stafford and Kupp is an amazing stack if that game shoots out well. In the same on the other side, nobody wants to play Kyler. He's just totally, dropping down the list as each day goes on here. And then the one I really like is Tua, and it's because of those yards after the catch monsters that he's got. And so it feels gross that I'm running it back, and I just probably talked for an hour here, but those are my thoughts on quarterback. And I love Joe Burrow also. I do think that game could go wrong with Mixon. It could end up being a Mixon game because I would run. Like I said, I'd roster head chopper at running back against the Jets. So this certainly could be a mixing game.
I think Chop was like a linebacker in high school, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if he played both ways, but
no, he played a little bit of running back. He also did recover an onside kick. He was on the hands team for special teams, and he won the game for him. It was a big play, he says. So
you mentioned like 7 or 8 quarterbacks. I like all of them to various degrees. I feel like quarterback, you're probably not winning it today with quarterback, but you can maybe lose it with quarterback because the opportunity cost is huge. And correct me if I'm wrong. Did you not say Patrick Mahomes?
Exactly. And I was just going to say that. And it was like, I didn't even mention Patrick Mahomes. So it's like there's too many good plays here.
Mahomes, if you look at Derek Carty, the blitz support Derek Carty, the blitz level game factors, it is projected for the most game plays. You got Mahomes in a dome. Indy theoretically should be able to run with them. I know they looked horrendous last week. We're expecting Pittman back. They should look better. 128.8 game plays projected in that game. Also, Mahomes, I know we're not certain who it's going to go to outside of Kelsey, but they're at least cheap options. And we're looking for some cheap guys with upside like MVS and Juju and Hardman. The floor can be rough on some of those guys, but I think for tournaments, I absolutely be firing on Kansas City, and I love Mahomes in a dome in a game where they have a team total of 28 or so, something like that. And that is the interesting point that Kirkwood is like, I don't know how you do it, Bobby. I get it. I understand. Now you have that one quarterback go off, and now you have a bunch of bullets if your quarterback does go off. But just honing in on that one guy. If that one guy happens to be Burrow,
it's so difficult to do that's why I just don't think anyone's going to do it. In the millie, I just think you can kind of take a shot. But I have other QBs. Like I built out a script for like 6 other QBs. I can always like whittle it, make it. I'd like to be. Usually I like to get to 3, right? Like that's where I'm most comfortable. So I get like an allocation and exposure to a bunch of like condensed. Like I like to just condense at the QB position, but I don't know. I feel like everyone's having so much difficulty. Allen, I want to play Allen, but he just seems expensive. I don't know if I play him with Diggs. Tua, issues with the double stack. Like I get it. It's a really condensed target share. Is he going to do it again, though? I really like Tyreek. Like Tyreek's a great play. Goff, I like a ton. I think Goff's a really good play. Issue is like Armon Ross, St. Brown, he's a very good player. Is he kind of I feel like people are not like a chase. Obviously, his target share is immense in that offense as well. I don't know. I like Goff. If I had to go down the list, Goff. I have some Cousins. The thing with Cousins is like he's so difficult at that price when you've got that's why I'd rather just play Burrow. I love Jefferson, but I'd probably more try to play him in Goff stacks. And then Marcus Mariota, he's a guy with I don't want to play Mariota. I know he's someone that he was in play for cash and stuff. I really like Drake London this week. I have some interest in Penny, so I don't know. Those are the guys that haven't played. The issue with we didn't even Kirkwood hit on it. We haven't talked a lot about Mahomes. It's just really tough with Mahomes, who he's going to throw the ball to. But I do like the idea of paying up at running back when everyone's paying down, getting to a guy like Taylor, Mahomes, and maybe a Juju stack in that sense. I don't know. I have 6 QBs built out, but I was just thinking in the millie, I'm going to really try to condense it because it's very difficult to do.
You're just flipping the slate, basically, because a lot of people want to pay up for the receivers. Most people don't like running backs. Running backs so far this year, it's 2 games, but for the most part, they've not been great. Last week, I think the only one that really paid up their salary was Chubb, basically, right? I didn't run through every single one, and that's because it happened last week. Doesn't mean it happens this week, but maybe that's just the nature of how the sport is moving. And there's less workhorse backs, more of them kind of split up, so it kind of makes sense. The game has evolved more as a passing game. By the way, just for salary reasons, I mentioned Carty. One of the guys he actually likes, Kirkwood.
Ryan.
Oh my God! Again, this is DK specific. He's 5.2K in a dome. In theory, he'll be chucking against KC. Man.
The worst thing about that is that he's either going to be right and he's going to victory lap it on Twitter, or he's going to be wrong and he's going to say it's a 1 sample game and it was a great spot.
Oh man, what a great position to be in. You can't lose.
That's like he's nailed it. That's touting 101 right there.
But I mean, to be fair, like I get it. Like I don't want to play Matt Ryan. I'll hold my nose if I do.
I'd rather just play Pittman. You know what I mean? But
well, okay, you play Pittman, then he's expensive though. Where are you saving salary in your Pittman lineup? So you're running back on Pittman. You're running back with Kelsey because now you're in a tough spot.
I got my man Mac Hollins. It's all good. You know,
everybody's got Mac Hollins. Is that like the worst?
Yeah, but
in the world?
But they don't all have Pittman.
Oh my God. What's up, chat? Kindly hit that like button, do subscribe, turn on those notifications, taking you straight up the lock, 2.5+ hours. Beimfohr and SquirrelPatrol will be joining us. We'll be handing off to them around 11:20. And then I've not seen who's in the Crunch Time crew, but they'll do their best to knock out all your questions for Crunch Time, 12:30 all the way up the lock. And I'll try to answer some questions in chat if I happen to see them, if they are relevant. I think this is a joke. Where's the Carson Wentz love? It is a revenge game for Carson Wentz. Easily a top 20 quarterback. First of all, I think he's being sarcastic, and he's not easily a top 20 quarterback. I would argue he's probably not top 20.
He's a top. He's a top 20 garbage time.
There's
quarterback.
20 is fringe though. Like it's there's some really bad quarterbacks. It's amazing. Like the 30
shout out to NFLSQTV.com, our new sponsor. Apparently, is that what's going on?
What is? I don't even know what that is. Like I guess they want me to.
They merged with Naked HD.
Football played naked.
The best of both worlds.
There you go, producer Steve, all over that, deleting those messages there in chat. I don't want to spend too much time as far as quarterback. I think we made it pretty clear that there's a lot of good options. You can't really screw this up. But it's hard to just pick one and say that's the right answer. But I understand what you're doing, Bobby, because now if you get it right, you have all these different routes and more than everybody else. And are you running 150 in the Million Maker?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to probably be – I'm like between three. I usually like to play three, but I don't know. I just think it's so difficult to whittle it down that maybe whittling it down isn't the worst idea. But I get Kirkwood's – like Mixon's a really good play, so –
No, full disclosure, I have 3 lineups on DraftKings. That's all I made last night quickly at like 4 a.m, and one of them is a Joe Burrow double stack, because it's like that's such a good such a positive EV spot, right? Like nobody's playing Jamar Chase really. I mean, he's like the odd man out of the high end group because of the pricing. There's also the worry of Mixon and the Mixon ownership, and no one's going to play Mixon with those guys. And it's the fact that they haven't looked very good and their offensive line hasn't looked very good. But it is a nut spot. Like they're playing the Jets. You can do whatever on the Jets. The Jets, although they have gotten a little bit stronger on defense, they haven't shown it really quite yet.
They're not getting to the pass rusher. They're not getting to the quarterback. That's the issue. And if that's the case, I think you give Burrow more time to hit Chase. I don't think it's
I get it. It's just hammer that plus EV spot, and if it hits, you're going to be. It's kind of like, remember that day that who was it? The Ricky D. He was all in on the one game, the Rams and something, and he won like a Millie Maker doing it or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was a completely low-owned game. The game was nuts, and he smashed.
Bobby, the issue is Cincy so far this year, as far as offense, turning the ball over a ton, and I guess getting pressure on Burrow. The thought process is the Jets are not going to get pressure on him, therefore he's going to be able to do his thing, and also. Chase will be able to get downfield and get loose. I guess that's the thought process here behind the play.
Yeah, that's the thought process. And also, I think some of the Jets, you can kind of bring it back with people are looking for low-owned running backs or 5K running backs. I really like Michael Carter. I think Garrett Wilson's in play, Elijah Moore. So there's run backs there. You need the Jets to keep it competitive, right? So
yeah. It's annoying they brought Johnson in too. Now you got to pick. I don't want to say 3-headed monster.
It is, yeah. He was like 19%. Carter was at 60%, and then I'm pretty sure Brees was at. I don't know. I had it up earlier. Check
30, 35, 40, something like that.
That's Brees was at 27.
Are we 61, 27, 9. The problem was that Ty Johnson got implemented.
Yeah, that's an issue. Yeah.
Kirkwood, who did you run it back with, Moore or Wilson?
I just look at last week and I see who scored the most points, and I throw him in there, and that's Mr. Wilson. Now I mean Wilson is a beast, right? He was a top pick. He looks the part. I'm on board. I'm sold that he's actually like a monster. I mean, you could play it with Elijah Moore because he was the preseason hyped up, Jets that everyone was hammering in best balls. And, it's only a 2-week sample. So sure, like it could be anything, but Wilson would be my preference. And actually that's who I have in that one of 3 lineups.
Bobby, a question here. This is probably a good Millie Maker question for Mr. Richard. Is this the week we're playing 2 tight ends on DK is viable in tournaments?
For me, I think I'm just playing wide receiver in the flex currently just because the opportunity cost of that position, like it's so loaded. So that's kind of the route I'm taking.
Stan was asking in chat, any interest in Hurts? Yes, of course. Hurts is awesome. Probably your cash game player, your quarterback on FanDuel. Probably. Doesn't have to be, but probably the one that makes the most sense. He'll be the most popular, I'll say that. But if you want to get the Mahomes or Allen and make it work that way, by all means, have at it. Enjoy yourself. Running backs, Kirkwood, I'll throw it to you. DK-wise, like ownership-wise, we're probably going to get Montgomery, one of the more popular running backs. He's pretty cheap over there. So there's some weather lurking as well in that game last I saw. But 15, 20-mile-per-hour winds, a game against Houston. They don't throw the ball in Chicago. They're not aware that that's been implemented, the forward pass. What a disaster organization. But, nobody loves playing Montgomery, but, like, he's cheap enough. And, again, the cap is pretty tight on DK. Fournette's another one, which I'm a little apprehensive about, just the way that overall team is just kind of a mess. 42 total against Green Bay, which is also kind of weird. But I get it because he's, like, one of the true workhorse running backs these days. I assume he's fine. Where are you at as far as running back, Kirkwood?
Well, you just said something that was false. You said that nobody loves playing Montgomery, and that is – I'm going to prove that wrong right now because I love playing David Montgomery. I've been banging the David Montgomery drum for years. Anyone who's listened to the Tournament Takes podcast, I've always been, since a couple years ago, like, this guy is legit good. He's had a bad offensive line. He's had bad quarterbacks. He's just been put in the worst situation, but he still has shown his worth. And you saw what he did to Green Bay last year. I mean, he is an electric back. Everyone electric. I totally believe that. Who won a Millie Maker with him the other year was Chop after, I had been screaming about him being good. And so Chop got on board if you watch enough of him, you'll get on board too. But people love to hate on this man. They all pile on, and it's like the easiest thing. Oh, Montgomery chalk, that's a fade. This is like the nut spot. First of all, I think he's good. First of all, then they're playing Houston. Now, we have 10 running backs in NFL right now that play 70% of their offensive snaps. That's McCaffrey, Leonard Fournette, Saquon Barkley, and number 4 at 80% is David Montgomery, right? And everyone loves this, Herbert hasn't come in and taken much whatsoever, right? He will get utilized in the passing. The problem is they don't pass, right? And that's actually a good thing for today is that his target share he's second among all running backs in target share with 21.4% target share. Now, the problem is that there's not many targets because Fields does not throw, and they have not been throwing. But whatever, they're going to pound the rock with him today, and he's probably going to get in the end zone. And I like him. I prefer him over Lenny. I think it's bad to play both him and Lenny. I've come around to that, in tournaments because of the chalkiness, and Bobby will agree with that. He may say play neither of them, but Montgomery, I'm on board with.
15 to 20 mile per hour sustained winds, gust of 25 to 30 in Chicago. I just dropped a chief mineralogist Kevin Ross weather edge, not weather edge, that's baseball, just the weather report in the YouTube chat. If you guys are on YouTube, kindly hit that like button, do subscribe, and turn on those notifications. Hit all the things, hit all the buttons. Bobby, feel free to talk about Montgomery. He's going to be the most owned on DK by 4%. I'm looking at. Apparently, Lineup HQ is doing some funky things. I've not hit refresh for that reason. I'm just kind of where I was a few minutes ago. I assume it's going to work itself out soon enough if you guys are on the site. But according to chat, it's acting a little wonky right now. But it's fine for me, but I'm not messing with it. Montgomery chalked and Mixon, Fournette. Expect a bounce back today for Cook against Detroit. The game script went against them last time, getting absolutely walloped, shellacked by Philadelphia last game out. Derrick Henry is really cheap. We can give him that now. DK is not the favorite play because he doesn't really catch the ball, but of course he can break off 202, and who cares about his catches? What do you got, Bobby? Give me the rundown as far as running backs.
So I'm also like Kirkwood. I like Montgomery. Like I usually play him. It seems like a pretty good spot. The ownership's tough to swallow. He'll definitely be in my pool. Fournette to me seems like a full fade. Like I think Fournette's going to be the highest owned, and I just don't think I can play that in tournaments. I don't think there's a ceiling there. It's scary though because he's getting a ton of the snaps, so that can always be an issue. In terms of mixing, like I'm obviously like if I'm playing Chase and I'm hoping for a big day from Chase, I'm going to be under on Mixon.
Yeah,
I do understand like how good of a spot this is for Mixon. Like it's a fantastic spot. Yeah. And who was the other one you mentioned? What running back?
I was just throwing out names. Like Taylor is going to be like 8 or 9%. Seems like a good spot against KC. But he's expensive. Henry, at least you're going to get discount on him. He's not looked great so far. That Tennessee team overall has looked pretty rough. Vegas is traveling cross country, and they're playing that 1:00 game, which supposedly, gamblers, sharp gamblers historically think that's a thing. Vegas, of course, coming off a rough loss to Arizona as well. Eckler, maybe they lean on a little bit more today with the presumed absence of Herbert. He's going to be lost as far as ownership. Again, it's just hard to get all these studs. CMC is 7% for CMC. Again, New Orleans is supposed to be a good defense, but he's going to be out there a ton. They just haven't been efficient. They have not run a lot of plays, which has sort of hurt him as well. But wherever you want to go, dealer's choice, man.
So I like Penny, and the reason is I know Kenneth Walker played last week. Snap percentage is down. If the snap percentage ticks up, he's in a good spot. They're home favorites. I know it's just 1 point. But I don't mind going to Penny just because he has that ability to fall in the end zone twice. Mostert and Edmonds are guys that I'm considering. I think they'll be in play for me. JT is tough. Jonathan Taylor, I want to play him. I'm having so much difficulty with Mahomes stacks. I have some Mahomes stacks. I have him with Juju, and then Taylor is the run back. You get to figure Taylor's like the best defense of Mahomes for the Colts, right? You just pound the rock with Taylor. And last game, even when they were down to the Jags, he kind of got going. I think everyone expects Hines to come in, but he kind of got going that scenario last week, later in the game. And they kept him in there. So that was something I took away from last week. CMC, I think he's an interesting secondary stack with Olave. Obviously, Olave had all those air yards last week. They don't count for much, but if they hit, it's good. He's going to be low owned. Hit on Michael.
We're all trying to cash in those air yards.
We're all trying to cash in the air yards. What about Darrell Henderson? I know people don't want to play him because of Akers, but that's a really good spot. I don't know.
Kind of a flip flop last week, right?
Miami
flipped as well. Also, you mentioned both Mostert and Edmonds, and do you have a strong take, or you're just you don't know, but one of them's going to get there?
I think I'd prefer Mostert. I'm playing 150, so I can take the risk. I think I'd be Henderson over Akers, and the reason being, I was just looking at touchdown props and just total props. Henderson has the lean right now, and then for first scorer of the game, I know that it kind of correlates. Maybe Henderson had a better number than Akers, so I just kind of went with Henderson of those two. Can't play everyone. J.K. Dobbins, I know it's his first game back. I think you can make a case there. Miles Sanders, I know everyone's on this. People like this game. I could just see Wentz just putting up a stinker, and it becomes a Sanders week. Sanders is always a tough roster, and I think he's getting steamed up a bit. Singletary, people do not like to play Bills running backs. Definitely on an island game. They all saw Gilliam get that touchdown. I think I'll have one Bill in pretty much every one of my lineups this week, and I'm definitely going to play some Singletary. And DeAndre Swift, I think DeAndre Swift is the best tournament running back. If you want to go, everyone's going to go on St. Brown. You just play Swift at under 5% ownership with Jefferson. I think that's the secondary stack you want in this game.
According to Yisman in chat, Jacobs expected to play today. Kirkwood, there's a lot of names thrown out there. Feel free to add on or tack on whatever you think, or if you disagree with him, anything by all means. Somebody in chat was asking about running back for Baltimore, Dobbins. Yeah, and I know you mentioned him as well, Bobby. You're getting a discount on him? He was supposed to play several weeks ago, at least according to him, and they kind of babied him back. I don't know. I don't know how to feel about that one.
So I have a friend who follows that situation, and he
Okay.
thinks Dobbins is going to come in and play and be effective. So he's a big Ravens fan. So
he's full go basically as he's standard, like assuming he's healthy.
I want to get more confirmation on it. Like I'll be listening like up to log, but I think if they say that he's full go or if they give that indication, then he's a really good play versus the Patriots.
Lot of places to go there, Kirkwood. Who do you want to latch on to as far as running back? And feel free to introduce them into the conversation. There's a lot of options.
Yeah, so I think a couple that we missed on, like I don't think we mentioned Miles Sanders. Is that correct?
In passing.
Okay. Well, he's somebody that we could play. The price tag's cheap. He's looked better, this season so far. He hit pay dirt against Detroit. This is a good spot for him. So I'm on board there. We also, with another Patriots receiver going, the main Patriots receiver going down is, they just love to run. Is Damian Harris or Ramondre, or should we be looking to one of those guys?
Before the show, I did play some. He's just really, really cheap, Ramondre, on FanDuel and on DK, and I think he can just get in the end zone basically. And yeah, I don't feel great about it, and I don't love his share necessarily, but that's just the nature of the slate. And it's funny, Bobby mentioned the Seattle running back, and I don't love Rashard Penny, but I have him paired on FanDuel with the defense on Seattle just to kind of make some stuff work, and I get to pay up in other spots. Do you like pairing them together with the defense? I don't know if you're playing on FanDuel or not, Bobby, but they're basically the cheapest. Well, they're right above Jacksonville, like a 3-4.
I think you definitely can to correlate. Is the Seattle Seahawks going to be the chalk on FanDuel?
I think Cincinnati will be.
Cincinnati will
They're
be
3-6.
Yeah, I don't mind it. I like Drake London a ton in that game, and I think Pitts is going to be like, I don't know. I don't want to say this is the Pitts week. I never play Pitts. So I have my player pool this week because he's just 4.8 and cheap. And
I don't know what to do with him.
Seattle doesn't run any plays though. That's the like real issue. It's just like they have 3 running backs pretty much, and they're not running. They're running 0 plays. So it's just like. I like Penny, but I might have to scale back what I have. I like the Stevenson call by Kirkwood. Like, if they're trailing, he's the pass catching back now. So,
I got another play. This is JSU was on this one in our tournament takes pod.
Okay.
And Cordero Patterson on the other side of that Seattle game. So, first off, he was great week 1 in a really tough matchup against New Orleans, right? He had 22 rushes, 120 yards, hit the end zone for a touchdown, had 5 targets, 3 receptions. Great, solid usage. Next week, not so much in that game against the Rams. However, could favor come right back, especially when Seattle was dead last to receiving backs in DVOA last season. So, I mean, this could be the great thing about him is that he can get there in both ways through, they do a lot of fun passing plays for him. I think the team is much better this season. I think that's going to benefit everybody on the Atlanta offense. And so he's definitely going to get overlooked for sure. So I really like that call that JSU had.
Is there one running back they're going to be on definitively over as far as, and it's not hard to get over on all these guys like Taylor at 8%, Eckler at 8%, CMC at 7. Is there one running back you think you're going to be? And you only make so many lineups. So I guess it's not hard for you to be over just that one chair. Is there one that you think like you're definitely going to be over as far as the ownership?
Who, me?
Yeah,
David Montgomery.
And he's got the highest ownership.
Yeah, and I'm just going to slam him, and I'll probably play way too much Mixon.
Same question for you, Bobby.
I think Michael Carter.
Oh, so you're running some game stacks there with the Jets and the Bengals.
Yeah. I think I was looking at Squirrel's like core plays on the site. I feel like what he's trying to do, I was just trying to think through it. I think it's super sharp. Is if that Connor news comes through and he's not playing, I think Squirrel's has the intentions of going down to Ito Benjamin at like 4 or 5 in a trailing game script, and I don't know, in a Millie Maker format, pass catching back. I think that's pretty interesting in Kyler stacks, and it gives you the opportunity to get up to Cup, who's like not owned at all. So,
yeah, Oh, I thought Connor was likely to go. What do you? How much are you weighing that, Bobby, as far as the late games? There's 4 late games. Julio is also questionable. We don't know just yet. Obviously, actives an hour and a half before, but you don't need those for the 4 o'clock games. And are you intentionally backloading some lineups for like the what ifs scenario?
So you kind of hit on it though. That's the thing is Connor may play. It looks like he's going to play in that scenario. So I don't know. I like Ertz. Like if I just in terms of instead of Benjamin, you could go instead of waiting for that news, you could always just play Ertz and get up to cut in a Kyler stack.
Kirkwood, you were about to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say, what about CEH?
I think
it's a tough matchup. It's Indianapolis has a strong rushing defense allegedly, and so it's a tough matchup there. But the usage has been solid. He's clearly the guy. I mean, he's gotten it's the passing game work that he can really go off in too. But there's a lot of ways for him to get there with game script if you know the way KC has looked. So I just think he's gonna be extremely low owned.
In a vacuum, Kirk, would you rather have Dalvin Cook or Justin Jefferson?
I mean, if you don't say Jefferson, you're lying.
So, like, I asked myself that question, and I feel like the difference is the alternatives, the pivots at receiver are better than the pivots at running back.
I get that. That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. So,
I also have full disclosure. I have a lot of Rainmaker, Dalvin Cook exposure.
People are going to come at you on Twitter if you didn't disclose that.
Full disclosure.
I think Kirkwood might be the Rainmaker goat at this point.
How much did you win? Like 10K in Rainmakers? What'd you win?
2 weeks in a row.
16 grand last week.
What? Look at you.
Yeah.
And how much the packs cost you?
I probably burned about 12 grand worth.
Dean's thinking about getting in.
No.
Maybe. But now it's all gravy from here too. And I've sold cards. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess. It's the whole thing is overwhelming to me. I'm not smart enough to figure it out.
I'm negative EV Rainmakers.
What's that?
I'm negative EV Rainmakers.
Yeah, not everybody makes money on it automatically.
I just try to play
Bobby threw the towel in. He threw the towel.
I threw the towel and I sold my portfolio. Yeah.
You sold J3 in chat there on Montgomery. He's not happy about it. You shouldn't be happy about it. Like I'm playing Montgomery too, but at least I'm like not thrilled about it. You're excited to play Montgomery.
This is like my week. The only problem is I wish he wasn't this chalky. I wish there were more running back plays.
It stinks that he's that chalky.
There's no way I don't play this. I mean, he's been my guy forever. And I was also was also high on Todd Gurley when everybody said he was dust after like his first year and that he was awful. And I was like, people don't look into offensive lines enough, and they just assume these people are bad when they're running against stacked box with a horrible offensive line. So these guys end up, they've got talent. I get it. Like running backs don't matter for the main, I get all that, but today Montgomery's going to matter. Todd
Gurley is the world's youngest 28-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, he's dust now, but he wasn't dust after the first year when everyone declared him dust,
Speaking of dust, give me your favorite cheap receiver, everybody at once. You mentioned Matt Collins, Kirkwood. Is that the one? I mean, the absence of Hunter Renfrow. Is that the one? I mean, Aguilar, in theory.
Full disclosure.
Rainmakers.
I have plenty. I have 2 elite Rainmaker, Matt Collins, that will be in play today.
I don't know what that means. They're elite. Okay. Yeah. So do you feel confident about that? Or is that bad chalk? Like for cash, okay, sure. DK specific, you're making stuff work, but maybe you want to be under that in tournaments.
He's done nothing but show us that he is the number 3 wide receiver on this offense. And now Hunter Renfrow's out. So there's also, I mean, he played 88% of the snaps in week 1, 87% of the snaps in week 2, and now Renfrow's out. So I think it's a good play.
I'm with Kirkwood. I think he's a better play than people realize. Just from the eye test too. I watched that game the other day. It looked pretty good. He was getting the ball with Renfrow there.
So you're embracing that. That's just kind of opening stuff up for you when you're just being different elsewhere, Bobby, because he's going to be owned, obviously.
He's going to be owned, so I don't know how much I'm going to get, but I just don't think it's like the worst play. Treylon Burks and Olave are guys I'm targeting. I think Josh Reynolds is in play also.
Burks looked electric.
Yeah, he's good, dude. I thought he was going to be. it's so difficult for receivers to just come in instead, especially rookies, to come in and just be the guy. But he looks very good instead.
And also, there's no what's the competition to get to the top there? It's not very difficult. You got to beat out, NWI and I guess Robert Woods, I suppose.
Yeah.
But like, he's kind of dusty, maybe, sort of, somewhat. New England, you guys are New England guys. Give me the assessment. As with Myers out, should I be? I don't know if excited is the right word, but should I be playing Aguilar? Should I be playing any of these New England guys? I know it's an offense you don't really want much of an attachment to. You don't want much part of Mac Jones either. Bobby, what are you doing here with New England? We talked about both the running backs, and Stevenson's cheap, so he's kind of interesting. Harris pretty cheap as well. New England receivers,
So this seems insane to say, but like I feel like their offensive install, because of the situation at offensive coordinator, is just like absolutely trash at this point. And it's to think about that under a Belichick like coaching system, coaching tree. I just don't know what they're doing. Hunter Henry would be the guy I'd like to go to. I think he would be the one that would stick out to me the most.
3-2. It's a good pivot right off Irv Smith, right?
It's a good pivot right off Smith. Yeah. So, and then we hit on Stevenson. I think Stevenson's definitely in play this week a little bit in a trailing game script. Not like don't overdo it, but there's upside.
The big spends as far as receiver, Kirkwood, Diggs is going to be the most highly owned receiver as far as we can tell right now. 7-7, over 2K savings, which is very useful off of Cooper Kupp. Yeah, Cooper Kupp is the nuts. But like if he puts up 27 points, which is kind of what he's projected for, do you need that? It's nice, I guess, sure, especially for cash games, but that salary, man, is really useful. They can put up 50 against Arizona. That wouldn't shock us either. Amon-Ra, maybe Amon-Ra is just like a top 6 receiver, and that's that. Like he's not overachieving. He's just that's what he is. And he's entering that conversation, and he's just still underpriced. Jefferson, we talked about. Miami, that really highly concentrated offense. Buffalo's defense is disheveled. That feels like it should be a bit of a shootout there, Miami versus Buffalo. Miami should be chasing. Devontae Adams, like the flop lag. Maybe the flop lag is real there. He was awful last week, despite the fact his grandparents were in the crowd. He scored a touchdown, still nothing. There's a lot of good stuff here, Kirkwood. Talk me through the top as far as receivers.
Well, receivers is pretty fun this week. So, and also, like you said, like the game is evolving, and receivers are the one with the massive upside. You see Wilson won, a big high stakes player tweeting, out that people are still using their running back in the flex in the year 2022. It's there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, there's no one has ceilings like these receivers do if these games go off. Obviously, Diggs is a phenomenal play. He's underpriced because he went absolutely nuclear. It's the Miami secondary is nothing to be too scared of. This is a game that should shoot out, so I get it. I like it. It's just ownership. You have to be cognizant of it. I mean, it's kind of hard to build the Allen Diggs teams. And it's like everyone's going to end up with the same kind of construction. I've been going to if I want to use Diggs, I've been going with Tua on the other side just to make it a little bit different, even though that's going to still be popular for sure. It's just a little bit different. It's tough to make the teams work. You got to pay down at tight end. You got to pay down at defense. You got to and whatnot. But other than that. So Bobby kind of said that he thought that Amon-Ra St. Brown is a chase, right? So, but then I'm going to just make a counterpoint to that. And I get it, right? He's come on like out of nowhere. It almost feels like he's playing on Detroit. He's maybe, he went off last week, extremely high. But basically, if you look at his last 8 games, he's had double-digit target in 8 straight games. He's averaged almost about 26.5 fantasy points per game in that stretch. So he's been extremely consistent. If you put that out over a whole season, that's better than Cooper Kupp's entire, fantasy points per game. And I'm not getting on you, Bob. I'm just making a counterpoint. I get it. You said you liked him, but maybe it's a chase, and
I hit on the fact that he has been like ultra consistent. My thing is just within the last week, everyone's just going to go to Amon-Ra, and there's so many receivers, and like I'm playing him on Rob, but I don't know if I'm going to be 2x the field. That's like 32%. Just maybe playing him at the field or just in stacks. In stacks is how I think I'd play him.
Yep. And then there's Tyreek Hill. There's Jalen Waddle. And yes, that's running it back from last week. But then there's Justin Jefferson, who's got a massive ceiling. I mean, if this Detroit-Minnesota game goes off like everyone expects it to be, it should be Justin Jefferson and Amon-Ra St. Brown. It could be Cook, to Dean's point, to Dalvin. I mean, everyone's forgot about Dalvin, right? Like, and this is certainly their home. They're a decent-sized favorite. This could be the lean on Dalvin game. Now, Dalvin hasn't looked very good, but it's only been 2 weeks. And so, and he was a mass. Everyone was really extremely high on him, for the most part, coming in with best ball and preseason and all of that. So it's only been 2 weeks, and it's like everyone forgot about him already. Problem is he's going to be kind of chalky because he's priced in that range where you can make him play, you can make it work, as opposed to making like Jonathan Taylor or Christian McCaffrey work, which is a lot harder.
I want to ask Bobby in a second about your favorite Kansas City receiver. Before we do that, if you don't want to mess with that, if you don't want to play against Bobby, if you don't want to play against Kirkwood, if you don't want to mess with the DK salary cap, it's really, really tight squeeze, you can play over on Stat Hero. If you're not aware of Stat Hero, it's a unique fantasy sports platform that allows users to compete only against the house and not against other players. You participate in a head-to-head style contest for Stat Hero. They're going to provide a lineup that you have to beat with your own, as well as pick'em style contest. You should also check out the Big Dime League. What is that? It's a season-long leaderboard NFL contest with up to $50,000 in prizes. We're going to give you a big fat promo code there. It's Grinders, GRINDERS, 50% deposit bonus, up to $250 over on Stat Hero. Again, the promo code is Grinders. We, as always, we're up against the clock. We got to be efficient here. Does anybody have a take, or Bobby, I'll go to you, favorite KC receiver? Who's most likely to land as the winner in Whack-A-Mole today?
Yeah, it's so difficult to play Kelsey with Mahomes, just where he's priced and his ceiling. He has to beat some of those top-end receivers that Kirkwood hit on. For me, I think it would be Juju. Just had a not-so-great game week 2. He would be the guy that I'd kind of be looking at to pair with Mahomes.
Let's knock out some tight ends. Again, unfortunately, we're up against the clock. We can only talk so much, but there's still an hour and 40 minutes to go as far as DFS talk. You're going to get the greatest, one of the best live final participants ever. SquirrelPatrol jumping on very, very shortly with Erik as well. Andre, another $1 million winner, coming on later, as well as Kristi and TJ Zwarych. That'll be on Crunch Time. I see a lot of questions in chat. Stick around and ask them later. There's actually a segment they have carved out where they can knock out your questions, and they'll do their best to knock out as many questions as possible in that YouTube chat. Give me 30 seconds on tight ends, Kirkwood.
So tight end. So the thing that immediately stands out to me is last week, what did we say? What did I say? It was there's so much more upside to Mark Andrews, right? There's a massive opportunity cost, and he was not going to be the chalk, right? And so and that was the key last week, was just using Lamar and Mark Andrews. And it's the same this week. I mean, we are punting this week. This is bad, right? I get it. Irv Smith looked good in his second game. The usage was encouraging. He got 8 targets, 5 receptions, 36 yards, a touchdown, but he could also bagel, right? It's a great game environment for him for sure. So he could be great play. But then there's Tyler Higbee, who's going to get some love. I'm all set on Tyler Higbee just because there's so many other electric options in that offense on the Rams. It's the Cup show. Hawkinson, I get. Goddard is probably my favorite. Then Zach, I guess the ghost of Zach Ertz we can play. But I full disclosure, I have plenty of Rainmaker. Unfortunately, exposure. Nothing worse than ripping an elite and paying for a pack in you. It's Zach Ertz. But anyway, I mean Kelsey should be. It's always Kelsey is the number one option, right? And this game, could shoot out, especially if Cardi's right. If Matt Ryan plays well, and so I love Kelsey. It's just really hard to do, but you can make it work, and you just have to trust. You have to get big games out of T Higgins, right? You got to go down to someone like that in the running back range to make it work. Now, I'm hoping by the end of the show is one of you guys are going to give me the dumpster diver. tight end play? Because I have OJ Howard in my lineup right now.
No, you don't. No,
I don't like it.
No, you're chasing those touchdowns in week 1, but he ran like 8 routes. Like
is Brevin out?
Yeah, Brevin's out, so it's
okay,
just him.
I like it.
Okay,
It's just him and Farrow.
Like
It's gross. It's gross. It's gross. But like, I need a 27-9. I want it. I mean, Hunter Henry certainly moves up. I mean, so he has tons of red zone opportunity, right? Like that's what it's all about with him, touchdown equity. Like, and he certainly could get in the box. So
Juwan Johnson's 2.9.
yeah, and there's
that's a little
like,
safer.
and what's the main thesis with him is like, oh, this guy is talented. He's a wide receiver, right? Has he ever done anything? No.
He's getting 5 or 7 targets.
Yeah, I know. We could get 6 fantasy.
We
could get 6 fantasy points. I get it.
I mean, I think I'll take the over on 6 Juwan Johnson DK points today. I don't know what he's projected for. I feel he gets over 6.
I don't know either.
I can't promise 7, but over.
I got him as a 6.7 projected.
There you go. Bobby, is OJ Howard now interesting? Is he going to get more reps today?
Yeah, with Jordan out, you would expect it, right? The wind's there too. A lot of short 8-aught targets. I don't hate the Howard call at all. I think that's super sharp. I wanted to play Likely if homecoming for Likely. Talked about on the Tournament Takes pod, but I think we're getting all the Baltimore guys in. We're getting Bateman. We're getting Dobbins. If Bateman were to sit, I'd have some interest in Likely in that range. The tight ends I have the most, like in terms of like my exposures, the one I have the most is Dawson Knox. Hopefully he's in. Dallas Goedert and Pitts are the 2 others. From Hayden Hurst. I'll definitely have some Hayden Hurst and Ertz.
We unfortunately don't have time for your defense segment. I know you
Eagles.
For
the Eagles.
There you go. I was going to ask who your favorite defense is.
I got it. I got to take
Bears.
Nope, the Jags.
Again,
yeah.
Are they chalk? They're chalk.
I don't know. Some people like them. Right? Some people like them. Some people are talking about Carolina is chalky, right? Like who is the?
I think it's now finally ownership's changed to where it's the Jags and the chalk defense.
Really? Okay.
It
all seems like it's going to be spread out anyway this week. It's not like there's not like one massive standout like the Bengals were last week.
Am I wrong to assume Daniel's just going to be quarterback manager and you don't?
That's what I'm afraid of. Like,
it kind of sounds like Herbert's going to play, but
Vegas doesn't think so. At least they dropped the line by 3 points.
I get it, but the line could
usually
always
know
shoot up. Well, he could take a shot, and then the line will shoot up.
Then he might get kicked out. Then you can't play if you take a shot from the San Diego Doctors.
Yeah,
I don't see why they play him.
Pop his lung or whatever.
Well, just a wild story back in the day, a couple years ago with T-Mobile, Tyron Taylor. All right, we got to step aside and go. We got to make way for Erik and for Squirrel. Stay on the stream though. We're not going anywhere. They're going to be jumping in just a second. Give me a favorite stack, something that's taken on the millie. Give me something, Bobby. Finish strong.
Cincinnati, hit on it on the top. I like Burrow to Chase. So I'm going to have in my millie. I have a lot of those teams.
Kirkwood, same question, but these happy players that you have Rainmakers for.
I have to use Rainmakers for?
I don't know. You've been referencing it all show, so go off the board.
I just look at my 3 DK lineups, and it's the same as It's the Burrow, Chase, Higgins double stack. Outside of that, I just feel like Matt Stafford is not gonna be played, and so trying to make the Stafford Cooper Cup. I know it's not that far out there, but it's going to be lower owned than what it should be.
I think there's an interesting play in that stack too. If you don't want to play Higbee. I know a lot of people are going to try to play Allen Robinson, but Skowronek's down there 3-4. I don't know if you want to double him.
I like the Reynolds one that was thrown out there, as a run back for Detroit. As you're thinking of Skowronek, I'll counter with Reynolds, but
Reynolds. I would have more. I'm just saying in regards to Stafford.
He looked good in a dome game again, right?
We got to go. Producer Steve's going to kick us off in just a second. Again, this stream's not going anywhere. We'll be replaced by SquirrelPatrol and Erik in just a second. That was Bobby Gomes. That was Kirkwood. I was Dean. All right. Cue up the next video. We're off.
What is going on, grinders? It's Sunday. It's time for Monkey Knife Fight, and we're talking 3 props today. Going with the 3-pick, excuse me. Going to get us 5X on this one. Monkey Knife Fight, new and improved. Monkey Knife Fight 2.0. Get over there. The app is streamlined. The website is streamlined. The aesthetics, folks, looks great. Favorite game of the week for me, New York Jets, Cincinnati Bengals. Is it more? Is it less? Let's find out. So I'm going with all overs here for this 3-piece and a biscuit that we have today. Joe Burrow sitting at 269.5. I think this is going to be an explosion game for him yet again. The Jets can't stop the passing game with the nose. They're just running wild on the Jets in the secondary. Love Joe Burrow here. Going with Joe Flacco on the other side at 235.5. Going to take the over. Think they're going to have to play a little bit of catch up here. I know the Bengals offense has been seemingly anemic, but Joe Burrow did put up over 300 yards passing in week 1. I think we see over 300 this week as well. And as a result, I think Joe Burrow's going to have to keep up. Don't look now. Joe Burrow's hit 307 in each game this season. I don't think he hits 307 today, but I think he goes over 235.5. Love him here. And then, of course, Joe Burrow's favorite target since the LSU days, that's Jamar Chase at 79.5 receiving yards. I think he goes over this. Let's just go hot take here. Jamar Chase covers this in possibly 2 plays. Definitely think he's got big play potential in this spot on Sunday in the Jets stadium. Once again, Burrow, Flacco, Chase taking the overs. That's going to get us 5X this week, folks. And I think we will begin to print the money early. All right, we've been talking Monkey Knife Fight. This is Sunday Football. I'll see you back here tomorrow for Monday Night Football, folks.
What is going on, everybody? Week 3, GPP Final Takes. I am, as always, your host, Erik Beimfohr. You can find me on Twitter at ErikBeimfohr, and join 2 weeks in a row, John Breslin, SquirrelPatrol, king of the tournament and live final streets out there. John, before we dive in, and before hopefully the injury report doesn't bury us this week like it kind of did last week, but how are you feeling heading into week 3?
Good. I mean, it's the injuries get more and more relevant, and the weather gets more and more relevant as we get farther and farther into the season. And yeah, it's only week 3. But we already have some situations. So looking forward to it. It's going to be a good slate.
Definitely very excited for week 3. If you have not tuned in to this particular show before, a quick high level kind of overview of it's not your typical game by game breakdown. It's not your typical position by position breakdown. We're kind of trying to get an overall look into from a tournament perspective. If you're playing cash games, we will answer as many questions as we can in the chat. I'm not the world's best cash player. I don't even know if John is playing cash games. We have the projections and everything that can pretty much answer a lot of your cash questions. We'll hit some of that, but we're really trying to focus in on tournaments here leading up to lock. And the big thing is kind of some of the main trends and the main key points, decision points, roster construction, all that kind of stuff, ways that we can approach the slate from a tournament perspective. The first thing for me, John, I'm curious what you kind of think about this slate is so far through 2 weeks. We had, whether it was good value, bad value, good underpriced players, bad underpriced players, right? There's been varying levels of performances. I never felt a struggle to make a lineup. Like, no matter if last week, if you wanted Cooper Kupp and Devontae Adams in a team, you could have made it happen. There was value to do it, right? And week 1, certainly there was. This week, the pricing's getting more efficient. We have some value, of course, but this isn't quite the slam dunk value I think that we get kind of on some other slates and that we get sometimes in week 1. So it's a little the roster construction angle and ways to kind of leverage against the field simply through roster construction, I think is a little bit more pertinent today for me.
Yeah, I think so. And I like, usually we have like running backs dropping like flies. It felt like this week we had them like coming back in, like James Conner came back in, and like Josh Jacobs, I think he's going to play. So, so there was a possibility of really getting some value. It's a little bit easier on FanDuel as it usually is to put together what you feel like is a strong lineup. But yeah, and on DraftKings it's pretty tight, and there's no like screaming obvious value at 4,000. Like we thought we might get like a $4,000 running back, and it just didn't happen.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of nice that that's honestly not happening a ton anymore. They're pricing up the Alexander Madisons of the world and Tony Pollards of the world. So that is nice. I do want to start with maybe this game that I think is really fascinating. Bills Dolphins. Okay. If you listened to content and all that, everything this week, maybe you're on Twitter, you'll hear people talk about like, oh, everybody's going to stack that game. That's the game du jour, right? If you want to be, you're a contrarian, bro, you can't play this Dolphins and Bills game. And I kind of don't really think that that's true based on some of the ownership that I'm seeing. We do have, if I sort by projected ownership on DraftKings, Josh Allen as our highest owned quarterback. I'm not sure that at 8,200 with the kind of salary constraints we do have on the slate today, that Josh Allen's going to be I'm not sure he'll be the highest owned quarterback, honestly. And even if he is, I don't think it's going to run away with anything. If I move over to wide receiver, we do have Stephon Diggs as the highest owned wide receiver, but you barely see a Dolphins player on the first page, right? Of ownership. And so I'm kind of in this middle ground where with some injuries to the Bills secondary, like a lot of injuries, both their safeties and a starting corner and their best corner, Tre'Davious White, is still out. If both of these teams are just going to throw a lot, I'm not sure basically that this game is efficiently owned. How are you approaching this game? Do you think it's efficiently owned, under-owned, over-owned? How are you approaching it?
I think it's going to be about right. I'll take the middle there. I think, it's there's not a whole lot of chalk this week. And it might just be compared to last week where like we really knew that like Derek Carr, Devontae Adams, defense is almost legendary chalk at this point. Causing like Twitter controversies. He was so chalky. This week, it's not like there's no obvious spots. Like we said, like we thought we might get more injuries that didn't happen. And it's there's no clear value, no clear game. Like there's a handful of games that I think are all kind of in the same range, all the same kind of point totals. But some they have different like spreads, obviously, and so there's a different amount of risk with some of those games. And I think there's some of them are going to score better for DFS purposes than others. I like this Buffalo Miami game. I'm not going to like look to get it under the field. Like last week, I was looking to get under the field on Derek Carr, Devontae Adams, Cincinnati defense. And like with Devontae Adams, like I almost just couldn't make it happen. It's like, oh, he's in such a good spot. It's like, well, I'm just gonna take the Devontae Adams chalk and try to find other places like other defenses, other quarterbacks. Like this Buffalo Miami situation, game is good. I mean, like you said, like some defensive injuries. I think that's always maybe a little bit underrated. Like people don't like the general field in football doesn't take that into account as much as they should.
Mm-hmm.
I like this game, and obviously, like Stephon Diggs is a great weapon. Like Josh Allen is a quarterback that can like get you passing yards, get you rushing yards. Can run it in. That makes such a huge difference. So we saw last week with like Lamar Jackson, those quarterback rushing yards, rushing touchdowns. I was saying on a show earlier, like that Lamar Jackson 80-yard touchdown run is like a 250-yard touchdown pass on one play. The scoring is the same. So I like this Buffalo Miami game. Long story short.
And I wanted to bring it up because I think it's one of these weird situations. This does happen in DFS, probably more than people will give it credit for. And I'm gonna do better about answering the questions, Chad. I promise you, I'm not ignoring you. We'll hit some of these. They're good questions that are in the chat. But this game, I wanted to hit on this game because I think it's kind of a theme that happens in DFS sometimes where everybody right. The Dolphins game went absolutely nuclear last week. The Bills are just running through. I mean, I'm not sure that the 85 Bears couldn't stop this Bills offense right now, I don't think. And they get Gabe Davis back. I think people see it and they're coming into the week and they're like, oh my God, everybody's going to play this game. I can't play this. I can't stack this game. I got to find a way to get different. And then you start to dig in and you're like, okay, Stephon Diggs is probably going to be pretty popular on DraftKings. In particular, we can flip over to FanDuel in a little bit because there's some good FanDuel questions. But like Jalen Watt, is anybody like nobody's playing Jalen Waddle? Nobody's playing Dawson Knox. Do you want to play the running backs? If there's going to be 60 points in the game, the running backs have some potential to score some points too. Gabriel Davis is coming back. You see him on your screen projected at 5% ownership. There are tons of plays in this game that are not going to be super owned. The Josh Allen's projecting as our highest owned quarterback, but there's Tua on the other side. I'm not saying I like Tua as much as the running quarterbacks and such, but again, if the game is going to be like last week, which is what people keep kind of talking about, then why wouldn't I want Tua again? And so I just think it's, if we really dig into kind of the nuts and bolts of the projections and ownership and all of that, you see the game and you're like, oh God, everybody's going to play that game. But in reality, I kind of think, like you said, I think it's about right. And so I wanted to lead off with that game because I think it's one that everybody's interested in, getting a lot of questions. And when you just get the pass rates, man, when you just get teams passing like this and then passing efficiently and only to a couple of guys, it's perfect for tournaments. So same as you, I think I'm only going to be playing 3. I'm going to be kind of doing a 3-entry max day, playing 3 teams. I'm certainly stacking this game on at least one of them. So I'll be kind of similar approach to you.
Yeah, and I mean, there's the situations. Just there are other games, right? And this is an outdoor game, and the game that I think is probably most competitive with it is the Minnesota Detroit game. That's in a dome, so that gives a little bit of a boost. And you can see like Minnesota Buffalo, I think have the same implied point total of 29 points, and that's one of the first things I look at both to determine what I want to do with my lineups and what I think other people are going to want to do. I think it's like the thing that a lot of people look at, right? Is like what team is supposed to score the most points. And so it'll be interesting to see how the ownership spreads out between those 2 games. And then, there's some appealing games in the afternoon as well.
And one other game I wanted to hit on that I feel very similar to you. I'm going to hit Jerome. Jerome mentions this, and I think it's a totally fair point. He says, everyone is going to play the air quotes sneaky Bills game, which I don't think I agree with that sentiment. I have a feeling people are going to be surprised when the cards gets flipped. I think people are going to be surprised in that this is the game everyone's talking about all week, and you're going to flip over the cards and you're going to be like, oh, okay, that's fine. Ownership's fine. Like maybe Stephon Diggs is the guy where you're like, okay, because everybody's like, he's the cash game block, blah blah blah. I don't think that I don't think that the ownership's going to get out of control. Again, that doesn't mean you have to play it either, because there's a lot of other good games. We're going to talk about those games, but I just think it's important to take into account kind of this whole thing. Like when we flip over the cards, Gabe Davis ain't going to be popular. I'm telling you that right now. I'm not saying you have to play him, but he ain't going to be, he's not going to be popular. I don't think Jalen Waddle is going to be popular either. So there's ways to play it. A game kind of similar to what you mentioned, where you want to look at a team that's going to score a bunch of points. Kansas City Chiefs, which is probably like just we should just have a segment every week where we're like, are the Chiefs on the slate? Yeah, you need to talk about them in tournaments. But again, it's kind of the same story that we had in week 1. Obviously, they were not on the week 2 slate. Patrick Mahomes looks incredible. Their offense looks incredible. And there's a fun narrative going around there. Gus Bradley is the defensive coordinator for the Indianapolis Colts, he was the cover 3, the old school cover 3 Seahawks defense, right? And was with the Raiders last year. And basically, this is the type of defense that Patrick Mahomes just shreds, right? So not that we need that, to play Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, but I really don't see a way in which the Chiefs don't score a bunch of points today. But Travis Kelce is expensive. It's a split backfield. And you tell me who I'm supposed to play at wide receiver between Juju, MVS, and Hardman. I really want to attack the Chiefs, but John, how do I kind of go about the Chiefs? Because I think they're an underrated GPP stack too.
Yeah, I think that's one of my favorite stacks because there's uncertainty and you can't make a lineup that you feel great about when you're playing these expensive pieces. Like I look at Travis Kelce and you obviously have to sacrifice somewhere to like fit in an expensive tight end, but he's one of the most reliable sources of points at a position that can be so random. He can really give you a boost. Like when he gets 100 yards and a touchdown, like you're jumping over so many Irv Smith lineups if he gets shut down a little,
yes.
Yes. But the question is where else do you sacrifice? On a week when there's just not a ton of good value. And I think you have to just kind of close your eyes. Like I will have some stacks of that game, and I think it's a good like 3-entry max game to stack because I think it's going to be a little bit overlooked. But you're gonna have to pick some value pieces and just kind of like close your eyes and just play them and hope for the best. And we don't know how the wide receiver, distribution is going to shake out a little bit, just because it's a new receiving core. But and it's like I don't know, you don't necessarily feel totally comfortable picking like MVS over Juju or vice versa, or sticking in Hardman. But you have to pick one, and you have because everybody else is feeling that same uncertainty. And yep. I don't have like some kind of inside knowledge to say like, oh, it's going to be a Juju week or something like that.
Right.
It could be totally random. I mean, yeah, it could be like Juju could get a 70-yard touchdown. It's just called back or whatever, right? And and then it ends up being an MVS week or a Hardman week
or vice versa. Yeah.
You just got to pick one and hope for the best. And that's what makes some tournament plays.
I think that I'm glad you kind of said it that way, because I think that's hard for people to come to it's probably hard for me to, pardon my French, come to grips with sometimes, that it's like, tell me who to play amongst the Chiefs. And the Chiefs don't know. Patrick Mahomes doesn't know. Like Patrick Mahomes has no idea. He's actually said that. He's like, sorry, fantasy guys. Like it's not going to be the Tyreek thing anymore. He's like, 1 week it's going to be Juju. And it kind of was week 1, right? He didn't have a touchdown. It was Kelsey, but outside of Kelsey. Week 1, it was like kind of Juju was the target leader. Then week 2, it wasn't really any other Justin Watson. I guess it was Justin Watson week in week 2, but MVS picked up some more targets. Juju was basically invisible. Hardman did get banged up. But this is what we're going to ping pong these guys all year. And so no one really knows, which means in tournaments, we're always going to get good ownership on these guys. Or maybe Juju does it this week. And he is the highest projected owned guy, but like maybe Juju does it this week. Then next week it's like, okay, now it's MVS, Hardman. Eventually it'll probably be Sky Moore time, right? But these are the types of things I really want to go after in tournaments. If it feels certain, everyone else feels certain, right? If it feels certain that Stephon Diggs is underpriced, guess what? Everyone else can see that too. If it feels uncomfortable playing MVS because he hasn't done anything and he's freaking Marquez Valdez-Scantling, yeah, of course it feels awkward. But that one time he catches that 80-yard touchdown, you're going to be like, I knew it was going to happen. I knew it was going to happen. And I just couldn't pull the trigger, right? On the Colts side, Michael Pittman's a little expensive, but he is back this week. And it's kind of funny that he's been really popular, or he was really popular in week 1. And now in a game where they are almost assuredly going to be having to chase points and throw and stuff, he's not popular at all. I don't know how you feel about JT this week. I'm iffy on JT. I'd like to get your JT take as it pertains to like both him as a play and kind of roster construction and how the expensive running backs fit. I actually kind of like Nyheim Hines and CEH a little bit. Again, if it just plays out the right way, maybe CEH gets the 2 touchdowns, kind of like he has before. Maybe Hines actually, this will be the week he gets out on the field a little bit more if they're chasing some points. I like the cheaper guys, but what about JT and kind of putting a bow on this game?
I'm probably just going to play Jonathan Taylor in stacks of that game. He's just so expensive. It's just hard to see him being the guy at 9,000. Like he probably needs like 2-3 touchdowns to be the guy you had to have outside of like a game stack. So I like it for game stack. It's just very difficult, especially on DraftKings, to fit that, to fit him in even in a Chiefs Colts game stack. Like you really have to take some value plays. So I'm probably going to be right at the field or underneath the field, just because like it's just so difficult. And if I'm going to spend up on that money, I'd rather spend up on like the receptions with the right wide receivers that I think are going to be a little bit more certain.
Yeah, if JT I know he's been playing a lot more, catching a few balls, and he has had some games where he caught some passes in the past. But if it were just a little bit more like CMC-esque role, I mean, then we might be wheels up on playing him, especially at 8% owned or whatever. But just when there's just not really any paths to a big reception game, it's tough for me. I am going to pivot a little bit to hit some of these questions. I told you guys I would be better about hitting some of the questions. Big Hurt 828 Flowers. That is a mouthful of a name. Shout out to you. When playing single entry on FanDuel, can you double stack? I'm gonna punt this question to you because I'm not. I focus primarily on DraftKings, and that's really the only place I've had my success. FanDuel has been the thorn in my side. How do you approach just kind of stacking on FanDuel where it's a little more touchdown heavy?
You should absolutely stack. Like, I think it's the same thing. I stack all the time. I try to make sure I've got at least, like a general guidance, right? Like, I'm generally stacking my quarterback with one of his pass catchers and then somebody from the opposing team.
Are you double stacking though? Like Mahomes, Kelsey? Yes.
Yeah, like I think it depends if it's a running quarterback. So last week, like I did a lot of Lamar Jackson with Mark Andrews, and that his only pass catcher. And then I would run it back with like Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle. And I was sitting there thinking, like, I should have stacked more, right? Like, I should have thrown Bateman. I should have thrown in, like, I made sure I had at least 2 wide receivers. And, like, you don't want to be watching the game and then, like, oh, yeah, like, I should have stacked this game more. Like, you're looking for an outlier score, right? And, like, I was saying earlier in the week, right? You don't lose extra money if you finish in last place. Like, you got to finish in the top 20%. And it's like, yeah, it is possible you double stack a game and the game just doesn't get there. And, like maybe your guy catches 1 touchdown pass but the opposing team's not doing anything. It's only 1 pass catcher. Like, yeah, then you just lose. You lose your entry fee if the game doesn't go nuts. But if the game goes nuts, like it did last week with Miami and Baltimore, like that's what you want is you want that back and forth. And if just, there's an 80-yard touchdown pass, there's an 80-yard touchdown run. And they all just going back and forth, between the 2 teams, and they're getting yards, receptions, touchdowns. Yeah, I think you should absolutely double stack in FanDuel single entry. Like maybe if you have a running quarterback, like, and if you're using like Hurts, you don't need to go nuts. Like maybe you can do 1 pass catcher and then run it back with like a Washington receiver or something like that. But yeah, I definitely recommend a double stack as well.
Love it. I was just going to add, it's funny that you mentioned, it sounds like, oh, I'm exaggerating to prove a point, like, oh, there's an 80-yard touchdown, and then, oh, there's an 80-yard touchdown on the other side. And that literally happened last week. Like, that was exactly what blew that game up, right? And we talked about that here. I mean, I'm not saying we're the only people to talk about this, but when you just get a game with Lamar Jackson, and I mean, Rashad Bateman is awesome and even more explosive than I thought he was. Clocked at the 2nd fastest time in the NFL last week, actually only behind his teammate Devin Duvernay, who on the opening kick return that he returned to the house last week. And so basically there was just explosion all over the field in that game. And that's what you want, right? You just want we're talking about the Chiefs thing. JT rips off, you mentioned playing JT in the game stack. JT is the Derrick Henry, rips off the 80-yard touchdown run, then MVS catches the 80-yard touchdown pass. Next thing you know, the game speeds up, right? It starts getting crazy, just like last week did. Those are the kinds of things that we're looking for. The Bills and Dolphins, of course, again, have that, but I think there's a lot of other ways that we can approach it. Moving a little bit away from game stacks, I wanted to touch on some running backs because I have FanDuel pulled up now, but it's honestly kind of the same story on both sites in terms of ownership at the running back position. And this is where I struggle. So again, I want to bounce off you and see what you say. In tournaments, when I see Leonard Fournette and David Montgomery and Dameon Pierce as the highest owned running backs, I get the price, I get the projection. Nobody has to kind of explain that to me, but you get the Bucks with a horrible offensive line. You mentioned like totals and stuff like that earlier, really low total, no wide receivers, Julio, Evans, Godwin, all out. Rob Gronkowski's retired. And then David Montgomery, the Bears have no interest in even competing in football games. They were down by 3 touchdowns last week and they threw 11 passes. Is that what it was? I mean, they're not interested in playing football. And honestly, neither are the Texans. And it's like, if all I got to do is fade those 3 running backs in tournaments in favor of maybe a little bit more explosive offenses and such, that I struggle with that because there's not a lot of other good options either, right? There's a reason why these guys are the highest projected owned. How do you handle the situations like we have here at the top with Lenny, Montgomery, and Pierce?
So, I mean, I think they're good. There's a reason they're projected as being the highest owned guys. I'm really going to try to go cheap at running back, at least to start the season. Just I'm not seeing the production from any of these running backs where it's like, this is the guy you needed to have. I think like Nick Chubb had a good game, but you could even still like win smaller tournaments without him. But I think he had like 3 touchdowns. there's no running back so far this season that has proven to be the guy that's catching a ton of passes, getting in the end zone more often in games than he's not. Negative like touchdown yards. Like he's more likely to score a touchdown than he isn't. And so like in tournaments, I'm going to spread it out really thin. It's going to be mostly guys that are in the game stacks, right? Like if I'm playing an Amon-Ross, St. Brown, then maybe I'm trying to run that back with Dalvin Cook. That's a situation where I could see that game going back and forth a little bit. But yeah, I'm going to be like correlating my running backs. Whereas like maybe in previous seasons, I would have started my lineup with the running back, right? Like, okay, I definitely want to get Christian McCaffrey, and then what else can I fit in around that? And last year it might have been Jonathan Taylor. This year it's a little bit more like, no, I'm picking the wide receivers first, and then just sticking in whatever running backs fit in there with a decent projection, a decent score. And this week that's like Leonard Fournette and David Montgomery, and then you get down a little bit cheaper and Dameon Pierce.
Yeah. What you said and what Rob mentions here is kind of how I feel. And that's this is a joke. I want to play 6 wide receivers and 0 running backs, but A, it's true. And B, it really speaks to like what you said about the sentiment of the slate. Same thing as you used to go in and you'd be like, oh my God, Christian McCaffrey against whatever, the Texans at 9,000. You're like, okay, got to put that guy, in. Now let's figure out how to build a team around him. I feel the exact opposite now. I feel like the same as you. No one is out there in this crazy workhorse role. That's why Fournette and Montgomery are at the top, because they're affordable in either decent enough matchups, but with a really strong role. But no one is the old Christian McCaffrey. Remember David Johnson and Le'Veon Bell? You would just start your lineup every week 5 years ago, and you'd be like, okay, put Le'Veon and put David Johnson in. Now let's see what I have to build. I feel the same as you. I'm looking at the Michael Carter's, right? I tagged Miles Sanders again for 2 out of 3 weeks. I'm just going to keep tagging Miles Sanders because he's cheap. He doesn't catch a bunch of passes. He catches a few every single week, and he's on one of the highest scoring offenses in the NFL in good matchups. I'm going to play those guys, right? Hines, you mentioned JT in game stacks. I like Hines in game stacks for the same reason, but it's a cheap pass catcher. Just give me 6 for 60 from my 5K on DraftKings again, for my 5K running back. Please God, score a touchdown, because you can win tournaments with that nowadays. And I think that's hard for people to wrap their heads around a little bit. Like even if Fournette has a good game here, scores 18 points or something like that, it doesn't really matter. You're not hurting by playing him or not playing him. Excuse me. And then Dameon Pierce, somebody mentioned in chat, Houston will be up for the game. If Lovie Smith is the head coach of the Houston Texans, obviously used to coach the Bears. If Lovie's still like holding out some vendetta against the Bears from like a decade ago, then my God, that guy is like, this is like, what's the Keanu Reeves movie where he goes and hunts the people down like that? Next one's gonna star Lovie Smith if he's still mad at the Bears. But I mean, I get it. But Dameon Pierce is also not going to catch passes, whatever. He seems fine. But that's kind of my thoughts on the running back position. Was there anybody at running back, though, that from a tournament perspective, like on their own, outside of kind of game stacks, ownership and stuff, like stood out to you? I mentioned Miles Sanders, and he's not like super low owned, but I think Miles would kind of be my guy. Anybody for you?
I tagged Austin Eckler, and maybe it's a tournament play. It's like a guy that I think will see 5-10% ownership. And I'll want to be above the field on that 5%. I think we got him like 4.5 or something. Because I think the Chargers game is a huge unknown. I think a lot of people are going to be going to the Jaguars defense now with Justin Herbert looking really iffy. But it's a possibility. Like I don't know what that offense will look like with Chase Daniels. You're getting a lot of leverage. He's going to be super low owned, and we know he's a guy that can catch a lot of passes, can act a little bit, as kind of the centerpiece of the offense. At least from like a DFS scoring perspective, catching so many passes that on DraftKings that can really add up. You're going to get a lot of leverage off of teams that are playing the lineups that are playing the Jaguars defense. And I don't know that offense will entirely shut down, right? But I think if it's moving and if Herbert's out, it's got to be behind Austin Eckler.
Really, really great points that I think hit a little bit of another kind of theme, particularly early in the season. So we're seeing Austin Eckler, right? Everybody can see he's a great example of this. Everyone can see a kind of a declining role. I mean, 2 months ago, he does a little bit of fantasy content and stuff, I think, with Yahoo. Yeah. He told everybody, he was like, guys, I'm not going to get the same workload I got last year. He came out and told us. So like we've known kind of this thing was coming for a little bit with Austin Eckler. But again, like you said, particularly maybe if Justin Herbert can't play, and Justin Herbert's definitely not going to be 100%, even if he's playing. They're still trying to win games. They are only 1-1. They could, like, the switch could flip, and we could just see, okay, maybe this is going to be just one of those games. We need Austin Eckler, right? Keenan Allen's not healthy. Justin Herbert's not healthy. We need Austin Eckler. And it's a good matchup against Jacksonville. Like, sometimes going against kind of what we almost think is most likely can be really advantageous in tournaments. Like, Austin Eckler doesn't project well for me from a mean perspective. He doesn't really project well for us, blah, 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 right? Because we all see the same thing, and the inputs to the projections and the way we're making decisions is the same. But so what happens if that's wrong and you get last year's Austin Eckler, right? It's like, 5% owned 2021 Austin Eckler against the Jaguars sounds pretty freaking good to me, And so he's one example of a lot of that. I actually feel that way about on the opposite end of the spectrum. I keep kind of mentioning Jalen Waddle, but he's the guy who keeps sticking out to me. Dude had 19 targets last week. We're very excited about Tyreek Hill because he's the guy catching all the long bombs, but like Jalen Waddle had 19 targets last week. He's sub 7K on DraftKings, and he's not popular. He's not 1%, but he's not popular. And it's like, well, if everybody just believes, that was nonsense, that was a crazy fluke game, that's when I want to buy in a little bit more. So they're kind of the same thing on opposite ends, right? Waddle would be buying what we last saw when everybody else is selling it. Eckler would be selling what we last saw when everybody else is buying it. And I really like that approach to tournaments early in the season.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like he's disappeared, right? Like he had 10 targets last week. Like that's a big chunk. I'm kind of stereotyping like the 30-something-year-old backup quarterback, but I'm assuming Chase Daniel's going to check down a lot. Right. And they're going to be in a position to be checking down and trying to get yardage, and short passes. I don't think we know Keenan Allen's situation either. I guess he's definitely in. So there could be some pieces missing from that offense. And then
50-50. I believe the last I saw was 50-50. So again, same thing. Even if he plays, he's probably not 100%. So like, they got to do something. They got to give somebody the ball. Somebody's got to get the ball, and Eckler's probably their best player. So there was a couple of questions. Sorry, I wanted to hit Frederick QQ on touchdown dependent sites like FanDuel and Yahoo. Do you consider single stacking a quarterback with only a pass catching running back to try to collect points for all the touchdowns scored on that offense? I'll let you go first.
Not really. So I'm not necessarily trying to get all of the, like, I'm trying to find offenses that are scoring a bunch of touchdowns, not necessarily get all the touchdowns from one offense. That's almost more of a cash game thing where I'm like, well, I'm going to use like Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson. So like the floor for that lineup is a little bit higher. Like assuming Minnesota scores, like I'm probably getting the touchdowns, right? Like using the wide receiver or the running back. But I'm not necessarily trying to get all of the touchdowns from one offense. I'm trying to find a few different offenses that are going to score a lot of touchdowns and get like the premier pieces from those offenses, if that makes sense.
Yep. Totally agree. I'm not saying you can't do this, and everything, again, this is a kind of a high level question, is going to be a little bit, what tournament are you playing? What contest are you playing? All of that stuff is definitely going to factor into it. What does the rest of your team look like, et cetera? All the same kind of typical answers. But for me, I feel the exact same way that John does. I'm looking to kind of find, you're almost never going to find it, and it's not even going to happen every single week. But like, remember when Jamar Chase put up, like 50 or what? I mean, the Tyreek and Waddle did it last week, but it's like that. I wouldn't play Tua and Chase Edmonds being like, please. And I know that's not the same example here that we're talking about, but like, I want, when Tua blows up and throws for 500 yards, I want the dudes who are benefiting, and I want the correlated crazy spike game that like nobody could project. You can project Justin Herbert and Austin Eckler both having fine games, and you consume all of that. But like, that's not necessarily even going to win you a tournament, because I want the Joe Burrow last year, week 17 throwing for 500 yards on the Chiefs, and then the Chiefs are battling back, right? You want this kind of chaos. You don't want what is expected to happen. You want the total chaos and everybody's ceilings all coming together at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's see here. Dave, I'll be honest with you. My thoughts on Geno Smith are, I forgot that he was on the slate. I like playing cheap quarterbacks. We're going to draw the line at Geno for me.
I don't know. I don't mind Geno.
I love
5,000 on DraftKings. Like, that is a cheap quarterback, and he's playing at home. I don't mind Geno Smith. Like, he's so cheap. I think it was Cardi's talking about like Matt Ryan, and it makes some sense. He's playing at home in a dome, and he's like 5,000 or 5,100 or something on DraftKings. Like, I don't know. I think if it's a really large field tournament, like, I go for Geno Smith. Like, it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will counter with the quarterback on the other side of that game, Marcus Mariota, who apparently I'm just going to lose money on all year long. He's going to score like 16 to 20 fantasy points every single week. I'm going to keep praying for the 30-point game, and it's never going to come. But in equally as good, maybe a better even matchup than Geno. I know he's on the road, but has two really, really strong stacking partners and runs as much as anybody, right? If Marcus Mariota, he's not Lamar Jackson, but I'm saying if he had a long touchdown run, would anybody really be surprised? No. And at 5,500, you get that. You just get a rushing touchdown from Mariota at 5,500, and he could be, a huge piece to tournaments. So that would be my counter to the cheap quarterback.
Yeah. But yeah, so I actually like that game a lot. Let's talk about
that
like,
game,
it's
gross. It's gross, but it's cheap, and it's pretty condensed. How are you attacking that game?
I mean, I think it's going to be a large field tournament kind of game, maybe like a qualifier where like it's really almost first or nothing. But I think especially on DraftKings, I don't know if it's a game you need on FanDuel because the pricing's a little bit looser, but on DraftKings, if that game gets a little bit over the point total with quarterbacks that are in the 5,000 range, and like Mariota and Geno Smith can run a little bit, like they're not Lamar Jackson, but they can get a little bit of points there. I looked at that game, I was surprised it was so cheap. So I think it's a little bit of a sneaky game. Like, that's a sneaky game. Nobody's really talking about it. But yeah, like you've got that's the FanDuel pricing. Yeah, 7,300 and 6,300. But on DraftKings, like where the quarterback's in the 5,000s, like I kind of like it.
Do for FanDuel at the skill position spots. I totally agree. I wouldn't play one of the quarterbacks on FanDuel. I do. Again, I prefer Mariota. You've talked me into not totally poo-pooing Geno, but whatever. We'll move on. From Geno Smith talk. But what about the skill spots? If Kyle Pitts doesn't do it today, I'm just going to kick it off with Kyle. If Kyle Pitts doesn't do it today, I don't know, man. He's so cheap now though on both sides that you don't need he doesn't need to contend with Kelsey anymore at this price. Of course you want him to do that, but 60 yards and a touchdown at the new price that he's on both sides, you can still win a tournament that way, assuming again something crazy doesn't happen at the position. But you know what I mean? It's not. Now we're at the spot where it's like, my God, this guy is just way too talented for this price, and I don't necessarily need the tight end one on the week at this new price. Yeah,
that's true. I mean, I kind of liked him last week. It bothers me a little bit that they just keep talking about we're fine.
I know.
I don't like that. I like to hear we're really trying to find new. That's something we got to do better. We got to get him the ball. We're okay. But that's one of the things about this game is like Kyle Pitts, like DK Metcalf, Drake London, Tyler. These are actually good skill position players.
Good players.
Yeah. So I don't know. Rashad Penny's really cheap on DraftKings, particularly for a running back. I don't know. I'm talking myself more into this game.
I know this is terrible. We never should. I hate whoever it was that asked about Geno. I'm gonna end up with all this Atlanta and Seattle exposure on this slate, and then it'll be we're all trying to figure out who did this later on. Like, why did you play all this Falcons and Seattle stuff, and then you were surprised when it was 13-6 or whatever? Like that's what's going to happen. But I agree. It's like nobody's playing these guys. There's honestly on both sides. There's 2 good passing game options. It's condensed to Pitts and London, Metcalf and Lockett. And then if you want to, you want to sprinkle whatever, Noah Fant, Will Dissly, these other guys, more power to you. But then they also each have a good running back option. Somebody asked about Rashad Penny is 4,900 on DraftKings, and he's 6,200 on FanDuel. Last year, down the stretch, I know it's a different situation, but last year down the stretch, if this dude was 4,900 against the Falcons, he would have been a monster chalk, and we all would have been eating it. And he was ripping off 30 fantasy point games every week. Cordero Patterson ceded a little bit more work to Tyler Algier last year, but again, a totally unowned, really talented, high upside running back option. And so these are a lot of the reasons why just some of the more popular guys are not going to end up in my team, like Dameon Pierce or one of these guys. Like, give me one of these guys at 10% of the ownership or something like that. So I do really like this game. That's going to be the death wish of the slate, I think, though.
Yeah, and there's one more game in the afternoon I think we've touched on at all. Is Cardinals Rams.
Yes, let's do that one.
Because I think we definitely want to make sure we touch on that before we get out of here, because that's Kyler Murray I think is a little bit overlooked. I really like the idea of, like, last week I picked Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews, like that the tight end position is getting hard to fill.
Yes.
And like if you're not using Travis Kelce, and he's super expensive, so like I think Ertz is going to be one of the more popular tight ends, but I really like him, and I like the idea of pairing him with Kyler Murray because so many their wide receiver core is banged up. Like Rondale Moore's out, like we're not going to see Hopkins for another like month and a half. So like Zach Ertz led the team in targets last week. And so that's like, if I can pair a running quarterback with a tight end who's his favorite target, like I'm feeling like it scores really well for DFS purposes, right? Like the opportunity cost of the tight end is potentially much less than at other positions where like you might see, a wide receiver from another game like blow up. Like you can fit in like Kyler Murray, Zach Ertz. It's pretty affordable. And it's scoring well for DFS purposes because the opportunity cost is not high at tight end, and you're getting good, rushing yards from your quarterback, possibly.
I love that phrase. I'm stealing that from you. I think you mentioned it last week. The scores really well for DFS purposes. It's a perfect way to put that idea. RIP to Trey Lance. I was excited for Trey Lance to George Kittle stacks, even though it would have been the same thing. Like it doesn't work most weeks, but that time that it does, like you said, you win the tournament when you get the highest scoring quarterback. Maybe he's a runner too, like Kyler is, and he throws multiple touchdowns and maybe like, just a bunch of volume like we saw with Zach Ertz. Now Zach Ertz is not Kyle Pitts or Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews or whatever, but double-digit targets is double-digit targets, and you just happen to catch the touchdowns, which he didn't, but you just happened to catch the touchdowns. It's not Greg Dortch, catching touchdowns for a week, and you just lapped the field because you just secured the onesie positions and you won there, and you probably won there at a reasonable cost. Like we're seeing, Ertz 5,200 on FanDuel is really cheap. He's reasonably priced too on DraftKings, but 5,200 on FanDuel is extremely cheap. And then you have what's really great about this game is that you just have such, you have Cooper Kupp, who is such an easy and obvious run back, but you do also have some other options. If you want to play Allen Robinson, kind of touchdown hunt, you can just load up on this game, and it's kind of similar to a much, 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 much better version of the Seattle game, where we kind of only have a couple of guys on each side. Actually, I guess the skill talent's better in the other game than the Cardinals, but like you only have Kupp, Robinson. Some people are talking about Ben Skoranek, I guess is the last man in on DraftKings or something like that. But there's only so many places for it to go. And we know that there's going to be points. So like, those are just the games you look back on and you're like, what the hell was I, you didn't play the Rams against the Cardinals with like a Zach Ertz bring back. Like it seems too easy.
Yeah. And like, I think it's the highest point total game that's got a close spread. So I think that's something worth considering because some of the other games could not see that back and forth, right? Like we could see Kansas City score, 4 touchdowns, and that's great, and that's probably not going to kill you in tournaments. But like unless you see like Indy like running it back, like Kansas City might just kind of stop there, right? And then you might get a little more like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Whereas this game, I could see this being back and forth. And I think like you got to think about like the tight end position. Like if Zach Ertz starts catching touchdowns, that's going to be lapping a lot of teams from the early game that didn't necessarily score well at the tight end position. Whereas like if it goes to like Marquise Brown, you're much more likely to be having some wide receivers that scored really well in the early game, and like your lineups aren't going up as much because like you potentially didn't have that score from the early game.
Yep, 100%. I really like that. Really like that take. To put a bow on this one, James Conner looks like he's going to play. Questionable. Are you interested in him at running back? Two fairly disappointing performances. Obviously got dinged up last week, but in week 1, if we're assuming health, which is a big, very, very big assumption, we are talking about a guy who's going to get the goal line work and a guy who's going to catch passes in a potential shootout game. Are you dipping your toes into James Conner at all, even though he's been banged up?
Yeah, I mean, like dipping my toe is probably the right, probably the right term for it. Like I'll probably have single digit ownership in 150 lineup sets with James Conner. Like I was more excited if he missed, obviously. And more excited about playing maybe one of the cheaper, like Benjamin or I think Darrell Williams. Going to be the two guys. But it looks like Conner is going to play. I'm probably going to be playing him more in lineups like where I've got a Rams wide receiver. Like if I've got like an Allen Robinson or Cooper Kupp, then maybe with 150 lineup set, like I'm going to pair that with some James Conner. But he's not a guy I'm going out of my way to get.
Yep. I think that makes total sense. I do think he's another good example just of a running, like 6,200 on DraftKings, 7,100 on FanDuel. Basically, he's right in that same David Montgomery and Leonard Fournette range. And honestly, if we told ourselves, now again, a lot of this has to do with the health factor, which you can't really ignore. But if we were to say, we rewind a month ago and you say James Conner, Leonard Fournette, David Montgomery, Dameon Pierce, and James Conner's 2%, and all those other guys are 25, you would have been like, what? Why is that? What's going on here? And so I'm kind of trying to, another good example of something I'm trying to do this week is some of it is not going to be, quote unquote sneaky, but some of it is this, like we're so sure of who the best plays are and who the best matchups are, right? In 2 weeks, a month ago, again, I come from like the best ball space and stuff. All offseason, people are drafting James Conner in the 3rd round of fantasy football drafts. Dameon Pierce was like a 15th round pick for most of the summer. David Montgomery was a 7th round pick or whatever. Like, there's no reason that our entire approach to these players and teams should change this drastically in just 2 weeks. And so I'm trying to think about those kinds of guys. That's probably why I keep mentioning the Gabe Davis, Jalen Waddle, right? I really like T. Higgins in that vein. It was another guy. Everybody was crazy excited for the Bengals. Maybe let's talk on that game really quick before we start to get out of here. That one, and then maybe touch on the Lions too, because we talked a little Vikings. I think those are kind of the 2 remaining games that I really want to hit on. The Bengals, we're done. It's over. The Super Bowl run was a fluke. They suck. The offensive line upgrades are terrible. Joe Burrow is washed, right? They can't beat the cover 2 defenses. We can't play the Bengals anymore. It's like, it's the Jets. T. Higgins is 6,100 on DraftKings. Jamar Chase is completely unowned. Joe Burrow is unowned. And there are run backs. I think my favorite one is actually cheap pass catching running back Michael Carter, like we talked about earlier, that fits really well on DraftKings builds. But any interest in the Bengals Jets today?
I do. I'm a little bit worried, but I mean, everybody's a little bit worried, right? Like you can't look at like the Bengals offense and not be a little bit worried. It's kind of an all or nothing situation for me, where I'm going to be pairing Burrow with like T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and running it back with like Elijah Moore or Michael Carter. Or I'm going to be staying away entirely. Like this is actually one of the games that with the widest like range of possible outcomes, because it doesn't have like an outlier total, but I can see it getting there. But I could also see it not getting there at all. But that makes it great for tournaments. Because like you wouldn't be shocked if we're sitting around at 7:00 tonight and going, like, well, yeah, of course, Joe Burrow, 4 touchdown passes, 2 each to Higgins and Chase. Like that's totally within the realm of possibility. And maybe it's 5, maybe another one to Hurst or but yeah, and then you run it back. Like I think the Jets offense is maybe a little bit better this year with Joe Flacco than we've seen years past. And and Garrett Wilson looks good. Elijah Moore, we all knew had talent. So yeah, it's a game that I'm probably going to go all or nothing with, but it's one of the games that's going to be there in my game stacks.
Yep, I like it. I like it from a game stack perspective. Same thing. I prefer some other, like you said, kind of all or nothing. I agree with that approach. Really quick, I want to touch on the Lions, and then Donnie's asking about defense. Good, a very good question on some defense talk, because this week is very different from last week when we had the craziest defensive slate of all time with the Bengals. But piggybacking off of from the Bengals to another team that, I mean, the Lions, we're probably going to have the same conversation every single week with the Lions, right? Their offense is good and their defense stinks. And they got a couple of really, 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 Amon-Ra St. Brown was right there with the Waddles and Tyreeks and such of last week's slate. You kind of needed him to really ship something. And he's just an absolute alpha target monster. DeAndre Swift is one of those pass catching running backs that also, can score some touchdowns that we like, but in a split. But if we're going to really like Justin Jefferson and we're going to really like Dalvin Cook, and the field really likes Irv Smith, who we haven't talked about, that I'm personally not in love with, but the field really likes Irv Smith. We got to like some Lions, right?
Yeah, absolutely. This offense is going to be good. And it's going to be popular. Like, they got like the HBO stuff going on. But I think it's a little bit of a different team this year with some of the same pieces, if that makes sense, right? Like they're just better. Maybe a little bit different philosophy, but I think this is going to be a popular game, but it's not a game I'm going to go underweight on either. Because I think Amon-Ra St. Brown strikes me right now as the guy most likely that, like, by the end of the year, we're going to be talking about, like, can you believe he was like only 7,800 in week 3?
Yes.
Like he could be one of those wide receivers. Like, I don't want to say like this year's Cooper Kupp, like that's a bold statement, but like he could be a guy that we're looking at the end of the year. So I'm like, why wasn't he 100% owned at 7,800? Because I think the Lions offense is going to move the ball a little bit more than we're expecting. And he's just a talented wide receiver, and he's getting a lot of targets.
He's Cooper Kupp if Cooper Kupp played for the Lions, right? Cooper Kupp gets to play with Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay in the on the Super Bowl champion offense. I'm not saying he's just as good as Cooper Kupp, but from a target share perspective and raw volume and all that kind of stuff, he's doing the same thing that Cooper Kupp is for $2,000 cheaper than Cooper Kupp is. Cooper Kupp has a higher ceiling because he's attached to a slightly better offense, not ironically not Jared Goff anymore.
Yeah.
And so my only concern is ownership. How are you handling him from an ownership perspective? Are you playing him mostly just with Vikings? Because the field has caught on to Amon-Ra now.
Yeah, I'm going a little bit overweight, and I think we've got him as one of the highest owned wide receivers. But I'm still going to go overweight because I think he's going to be a guy we look back, and when I say like Cooper Kupp, like I mean like last year Cooper Kupp was like drafted like middle of season long league, and he wasn't like an extremely popular play early in the season, and he started to go berserk. We're like, well, yeah, he had a good game, and then by the end of the year, we're like, oh no, we should have like been playing him every single week. And I think like Amon-Ra St. Brown might have that same thing where he like kind of sneaks up on us a little bit in the first few weeks, and then by the end of the season, we're like, oh, he should have been way more expensive. And so I'm not going to try to I will often see guys that are listed at the top of the ownership projections, like, well, that's those are the guys I'm just automatically going to go under the field because I don't think there's like a 20% chance he's the top guy or he's one of the guys that you had to have. Like, I'm not looking that way with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, I will take 18% and go a little bit over that. And particularly because there are so many good pieces where, like, there's so many good Minnesota guys. Like, it wouldn't shock me if Justin Jefferson's the guy you need to have and the backfield goes a little bit over. And it wouldn't shock me if Dalvin Cook is the guy you need to have. So, like, and St. Brown, like, pairs to all those guys, like Adam Thielen or Irv Smith if you're going there. So he's a guy I'm comfortable going overweight on.
Love that. Totally agree. And I think it's important, right? Because like you said, I think a lot of people will tell me the best plays and he might fit in that and ignore ownership. Or a lot of times they'll do the opposite. It's like you said, okay, Stephon Diggs, right? I have the screen up with all the projected highest owned players. Stephon Diggs, Amon-Ra, Juju, Kupp. Okay, can't play those guys. Now I'm going to play somebody else. When in reality, right, it's really somewhere in the middle. It's our friend Jordan Cooper blenders. Lineups, not players, right? Amon-Ra fits really, really well into some lineups and does not fit well into other ones. His ownership is a factor, that is a factor of his ownership. It's factored into whether or not you should play him on certain teams, right? You're playing the Josh Allen to Diggs stack, and you got David Montgomery and Leonard Fournette. It's like maybe might be looking to somebody else besides Amon-Ra in that lineup. But you got Kirk Cousins to Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. Like, yeah, just freaking play Amon-Ra St. Brown on that team. This is funny. If anybody's watching live and watching the chat, the bots are absolutely going crazy on us. If you had to choose a favorite between one of these two guys, this is a little bit more of a lineups not players thing for me, but I think it's probably Amon-Ra, but I do really like Waddle in tournaments.
Yeah, I think that's right. I have Waddle projected lower, so the answer is I like Amon-Ra St. Brown, but I like both of those guys. We should touch on defense real fast.
Yes,
because I think it's an interesting situation. Like, we don't have a chalk defense like the Bengals, I don't think. But we have to see what's going to happen in the Chargers game. I kind of like Jaguars. Like, I like the Jaguars a little bit more than I did the Bengals last week, and the Bengals are like 40% owned. Because I think the Bengals or the Jaguars defense this week isn't necessarily projecting that well because we don't know what's going to happen. But if you know that Chase Daniels, like if you knew Chase Daniels is going to be getting the start there, you'd be plugging in the Jags defense. But people aren't going to do that because they're not projecting that well because we don't know if Justin Herbert's going to play. But you have to think that even if Herbert does play, they're going to be throwing everybody at him, trying to get sacks and turnovers because we don't know how those ribs are holding up. So I like the Jags defense a lot this week.
Definitely. And to Donnie's specific question, right now, I have FanDuel up here where the Panthers are a smidge more expensive. So we are seeing the Bengals again as the highest owned FanDuel defense. That is not the case on DraftKings, where the Panthers are 2,600 and projecting as the highest owned defense. And kind of after them, it's just a hodgepodge of random stuff. But to John's point, totally agree. Not the same case as last week. And I actually don't really think, unless we somehow get word in the next 30 minutes that Herbert's not going to play, or like he's going to be like really limited, I don't think people are going to play the Jags because they just don't project. Like you said, they just project terribly. It's the Jags against one of the best offenses in the NFL, and it's afternoon. We don't have any of that certainty. But again, that makes me like them. That makes me like them more. I will probably play some Jags. I haven't finished my lineups yet, but I really like that. Is there any other defense that you kind of think is going overlooked? I will toss my favorite one out there. I'm going to throw two. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to throw two. The Packers, particularly on DraftKings at 2,800 against this Bucs team, kind of quasi leverage on chalky Leonard Fournette and maybe a little bit of the wide receivers. But just the Bucs offense is absolutely in shambles. It's Tom Brady's great, but the offense is in shambles. And then the Eagles. Carson Wentz and that offense looked terrible against the Lions. I think that the Eagles are way too talented to let Carson Wentz do much, and that gives them a lot of upside.
Yeah, I like both those picks. I'll throw in mine. Just in terms of ownership, I think the Bears, because they're you have to spend up to get them. So I think you're going to see obviously single digit ownership, like probably less than 3%. But the defensive scoring could be so random that they could get 2 defensive touchdowns, and if they're 1% owned, 2% owned, they could be the team that you need to have, and they're priced up for a reason. Like they're facing Houston, so Bears is my low owned defense.
Love it. Last thing, I got to reintroduce this. We did this last year, and we used to do it when we would do our old NFL show that most people watching this probably never even watched because it's been such a long time. What's the hot take that's in the GPP winning lineup today? One player, one situation, whatever. Who do I need to play that's going to blow up the slate?
I'm going to go with Kyler Murray.
Ooh, I like it. I am going to my guy. He's back in the game that everybody wants to play and nobody's playing him. Gabe Davis. We're getting the touch. We're getting the Chiefs playoff game performance today. All right. We're getting 100 yards and multiple touchdowns from Gabe Davis. Everybody's playing Stephon Diggs. It's Gabe Davis day. So that's it. GPP Final Takes, Kyler Murray and Gabe Davis, and a whole bunch of other stuff that we talked about for the last hour for myself and John and Sosa behind the scenes. We'll see you guys in week 4.
We're here back at the Fantasy Bar with your pints and picks for Week 3, presented by BetMGM. Use promo code GRINDERS for a risk-free bet up to $1,000. Now sit back, grab your favorite pint, while I give you my favorite picks for Week 3. Let's start with the total. We're going to go over 52.5 in the Detroit-Minnesota game. Now, this Lions offense been on fire, and this dating back to the end of last season. 4 overs now in a row for Detroit. Offense leading the NFL in scoring at 35.5 points per game. That defense keeping pace, allowing 32.5 points per game. We have not yet seen a big offensive explosion from this Minnesota Vikings team, but they have gone over in 5 of their last 6 on-field turf. 7 of the last 10 have been over for Minnesota. 58% of the bets coming in on this, 92% of the money. I think we get a shootout here in Minnesota. Next pick for you, we're going with the Green Bay Packers on the money line, even odds here at BetMGM. Now, both these teams dealing with a lot of injuries, as we know, but Tampa Bay missing the more significant pieces. Would you rather be missing a Sammy Watkins or what Tampa Bay's dealing with and missing Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Julio Jones looking unlikely as well? Countless injuries on that offensive line, defensive line. They are just outmatched right now by this Green Bay team. We've seen a lot of line movement in this one, moving from Tampa Bay -3 down to -1. Let's give the 1 point away. We don't need that. If Green Bay can limit Leonard Fournette and the running game here, Green Bay just simply has the healthier defense, the 2 running backs that can be in play. 48% of the bets coming into this one, 70% of the money. Let's follow the money. Green Bay gets the job done in Tampa Bay. All right, that'll do it here for Week 3 in the Fantasy Bar for pints and picks. Remember, promo code GRINDERS over on BetMGM for a risk-free bet up to $1,000. For scoresandodds.com, for RotoGrinders.com, for BetMGM. I am Beer saying salut, guys. Best of luck with your bets this week, and we'll see you next week.
Yo, what's up, everybody? Sorry, I didn't even know I was the one hosting. I thought it was Drake. Welcome to another edition of NFL Crunch Time. It's the show you have all been waiting for. We got like 700 people watching right now and nowhere near enough likes. So let's hit the like button. Let's get this started, courtesy of FanDuel, our sponsor. And let's start diving into this slate. I am joined by 2 of the very best DFS players in the entire industry. First, I'll throw it to the one with the nice Saints jersey on, jersey 26, Andre Alford. How's it going?
It's going pretty good over here. Just trying to get my lineups together as always. The last minute rush. But other than that, doing good. Hopefully, you're going to have a good week this week. I feel good about it.
I'm with you as well. I'm feeling pretty good, feeling pretty confident, but that may not be a good thing. We'll see how it goes. Also joined by somebody I met in Chicago, somebody I like to consider a friend now, Kristi Metzger. Krayton, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Great to see you guys. I know I was thinking about that. We had the chance to kind of break down the slate together in Chicago after the live final, and so can't wait to do it again today. I think this is actually just a great slate, and can't wait to see what your thoughts are too.
I agree. This one is a lot of fun. So let's start getting into it already. Let's start talking about stacks before we go position by position and start talking about our favorite cash game plays on each of the sites. We'll go through DraftKings, we'll go through FanDuel. But before that, I want to just touch on our favorite teams on the slate to kind of target overall. Dre, what are your favorite games and your favorite teams you're looking to stack today?
I'm all over the place a little bit, but I really do love. Obviously, we know I think people are gonna really be high on that Buffalo game, so I don't mind that today a little bit. But I really do like this Kansas City spot a lot. Try to get over own on that if I can. I also do no one's really talking about Jalen Hurts a little bit too. I'm finding, so I'd like trying to get some of that as well. Vikings as well, and then I like a little bit of Atlanta Seattle stack. I like just go with some of the secondary pieces in there. I think that's a good option today.
Yeah, I'm with you on most of those teams there. Atlanta's somebody I sort of liked and then never ended up really getting to as I tried to dive into things here. But the other teams that you were rolling with, I'm rolling with as well. I've been trying to jam in all week Josh Allen into my main lineup, into my cash team, and it just didn't really work. I didn't like my lineups. I was hoping for some guys to get ruled out. It didn't happen. And so I think I'm going to end up being on Jalen Hurts as well. How about you, Kristi?
Yeah, I like a lot of those games too. I would say I love that Buffalo-Miami game, and I thought it'd be a little bit more popular maybe to start the week, but I like the other side of it too, going with Tua and his great receivers. I mean, both Waddle and Tyreek get 60% of the pass targets. We know where the offense is going there, so love that game. You mentioned Kansas City, Dre. I think that's a great one. I think it might go a little overlooked too, just because we don't necessarily know where all the receptions are going, which makes it a great tournament play. So absolutely love Kansas City. Love that Detroit-Minnesota game. I think, you've got Cousins, you've got Goff, you've got Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown. You've just got so many great pieces in that game. And then one that I'll mention in the late slate that I think is going to go a little overlooked, but you've got Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Kyler Murray and crew there, which I think is just an awesome tournament play. And if things bust on the earlier slate, you could be sitting great with a lot of those guys left in your lineup. So those are my favorite game stacks of the week.
Yes, I am absolutely with you on the Rams and the Cardinals. That's a game I'm going to be significantly overweight on. I'm running kind of my one main cash single entry lineup over on FanDuel. I'm making my, and then I have 3 next main tournament lineups and then a bunch of sprinkles. And in my main tournament lineups, I got a Stafford team, I got a Josh Allen team, and I have a Kyler Murray team as well. So I absolutely love that game. That is my favorite one to stack as well. Let's start talking position by position. We're going to start with DraftKings. I would kind of like each of everyone's cash / optimal takes, and then we'll get to tournament from there as well. So starting over at QB today, I think Jalen Hurts as well as Josh Allen are the 2 you're looking towards in cash games. If you want to save some salary, you got Hurts, but where the salary is closer together, on DraftKings, I kind of like just paying up for Allen in optimal lineups. What about you, Dre?
Yeah, for cash, I definitely see a lot of Allen and Jalen Hurts for sure coming as a popular takes, which is fine. But I don't mind those for cash at all. Tournament wise, like I said, Mahomes is definitely someone I want to be targeting a lot. Kirk Cousins, Joe Burrow. I'm Matthew Stafford as well, and another guy, Marcus Mariota. We're not talking about him much, but I like him a little bit, paying down a little bit at quarterback just to try to fit some of these receivers in that we know that are really expensive on the slate that I think we have to try to pay attention to a little bit. And Cardi's play of the week, I do kind of like a little bit of Matt Ryan. Like, I'm surprised at myself. I never thought I would play it, but I like him a little bit.
A little bit of Matt Ryan in tournaments. There are some interesting cheap options. Like Tua just went absolutely off last week. He's only 6-1. Matt Ryan, incredibly cheap on DraftKings. You got Jared Goff at 5,800 in one of the highest total games of the slate. Like, a lot of people like stacking that game, but I don't think you're going to see too many people doing it with Jared Goff. So there are definitely a lot of interesting cheap options today on DraftKings. You got a 5K Geno Smith. That's just so cheap for a quarterback. Kristi, who are you feeling in optimal lineups? Is it Hurts? Is it Allen? And then where are you looking to pivot in tournaments?
Yeah, you're exactly right. I think Hurts and Allen are exactly the cash game plays. I think you play those guys and kind of move on. But for tournaments, you're right. I mean, there's a lot of great plays. Tua, like you mentioned, I expected him to have a little bit more ownership after last week. And, I have, kind of 3 lineups that I have him in one of them right now for my tournament lineups. I just think he's great. And we know where the production is going. Buffalo on the other side with Diggs. There's just so many great options there. So absolutely love him. Mahomes, you have to pay up for him, but he's one of my favorite tournament plays too. I think there's just a lot of great ways to go with his receivers and getting Kelsey in there. I think that'll be a little bit contrarian, paying up at tight end as well. So love him. Kirk Cousins too. I just love that game, and I actually like both Cousins and Goff just because they have the potential to put up. I mean, this should be kind of like the Coors Field game today on the slate, really, for football. So I got a lot of Cousins too. Think he's great. And then, I know you talked a little bit about that Atlanta, the Marcus Mariota. I think, for a cheap play, certainly don't mind him in tournaments as well. But those are kind of the main guys that I'm looking at for tournaments and cash.
Yeah, I really like pivoting to somebody like a Matt Stafford in tournaments on DraftKings. No, he doesn't have the rushing upside, but at 6,500, he's just so cheap. You can pair him with a very cheap Tyler Higbee as well as Cooper Kupp. And we've been talking about liking this game as a game stack. It's got the this is something Squirrel mentioned in the earlier show, that it's got the highest total on the slate for a game that has a close spread. And so it kind of just screams game stack. And I don't actually mind the over bet on that one as well. And while we are talking about overs, I know Dre is doing a lot of stuff, always making a lot of bets. He's doing some stuff at Scores and Odds, and we've got you covered over at scoresandodds.com, your number one place for all things sports betting. Get ready for the NFL season and arm yourself with the best tools and analysis. Check out the brand new Parlay IQ, free for everyone currently, and use it to build optimal same game parlays based on thousands of games worth of simulated data. And I know some people are struggling with Lineup HQ right now. I know our techs are working on it. Hit the refresh every now and then. It's been going out a little bit this morning, but if you hit the refresh, it's been popping back on. So I know people are working on it, and make sure you are refreshing the page. Taking it over to the running back position, we got 2 RotoGrinders core plays here for optimal lineups. We have Joe Mixon. We have Leonard Fournette. Who are the 2 of you looking at today at running back?
You want to start, Dre?
Sorry, I'll throw it to Dre first. Sorry.
Okay, I didn't know who told you first.
Yeah, that was on me.
It's all good. Well, it's tough. Like, I was just building lineups on FanDuel, so like I'm not getting a lot of Joe Mixon. I'm getting cheaper than that, but on DraftKings, I think you probably can play Joe Mixon. But I still like spending down at running back a little bit more. Going just a little bit further down, I really do like Dameon Pierce, especially if he's coming at a 7% ownership at 5K. That's just a steal to me. Miles Sanders, those guys are guys that I like in tournaments. I think you can also use them in cash too, because like everyone was saying earlier on previous shows, running backs this year have not really stood out and had like that monster game. It's been wide receivers. So, and there's 3 wide receivers that I'm trying to fit in my lineup that I know will have monster games or will have standout games just from their history of previous matchup with the teams, which we'll get to a little bit. And what I think they can do versus the defenses that they have now too, it was presented in front of them. So I don't mind also a guy like David Montgomery, 5'9" is a good price at 21% ownership. Mixon, like I said, is good too. Cook is going to be, I think Cook's going to be honestly less so than what we have him at right now, 17%. Because I really haven't heard no one really talk about him. But I still like the play a lot too.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like all of those calls that you mentioned. Kristi, who do you like to go to in optimal lineups? Who do you like in tournaments? And also, is there anyone in particular on DraftKings that stands out more so than on FanDuel for you for tournaments?
Yeah, so for running backs, I agree. I think this year, for me, I'm finding myself paying down at running back a lot more because there's so many great receiver plays, especially this week, that are really standing out where you're getting a ton of production. So you're going to see guys like Jonathan Taylor and Christian McCaffrey, even Dalvin Cook to some extent, go a little bit more overlooked because of some of the value plays. And so for value, I agree with Dre. Dameon Pierce, he gets a great matchup today. He's priced cheap on both sites, so I like him. I think he's a great cash and tournament play. And then I think Leonard Fournette is going to carry a lot of ownership in both cash and GPP lineups. I mean, the Bucs are so banged up; they just don't have much. We know he's going to get a lot of production there, so I like that play a lot. Looking at on FanDuel, then you've got Alvin Kamara, who's sitting there, who I think makes a great tournament play today. I mean, they're missing a lot of pieces in their offense today too. So, I mean, I think he's someone that is really, really sneaky. At 7K, I'm finding myself with him in a lot of lineups. David Montgomery, I know that was mentioned already too. I really do like it. I mean, he's been playing well. I know it's, the Bears offense has been really tricky this year. But I like David Montgomery, especially. I would say he stands out a little bit more on DraftKings for me than on FanDuel this week. So he's a guy that I'm way overweight over there. Mixon, I like a ton. That Bengals game, I think, is a very great tournament stack. I like the passing part of it too. But Joe Mixon is just absolutely – he's just getting it done. He hasn't had a lot of touchdowns to show for it yet, but it could be a week where he absolutely smashes. Still a great price. Dalvin Cook, if there's ever a week for him to go off, I mean, it's this week. I mean, just a great game environment. He hasn't done much. He's been very, very disappointing. I would imagine Jefferson is going to be a lot more popular than Cook, but I think this is the spot for Dalvin this week. And he's sitting at 8,300. On FanDuel, think he makes an absolute great play. And then let's see, I was going to mention just another tournament guy I think you could throw in there. It's interesting because we talk about the Jags defense. I think they're going to be pretty popular today. I don't mind throwing James Robinson in there. We want Travis Etienne to really be the guy. He just hasn't done it yet. I still think, Robinson could have a big game in there too. So just as a tournament play, he's someone that I think you could put in there on the sheet.
I really like the James Robinson call because he's somebody that I'm planning on loading up on the Jags defense today. I really don't think Herbert plays. And even if he does, all these reports coming out that he's going to have to sign a waiver for the pain injection in his ribs. Do we remember what happened the last time they gave an injection to somebody in their upper body? It was Tyrod Taylor, and that's why Justin Herbert is now starting. And so I just imagine he takes the week off here. And even if he doesn't, if we don't end up getting a Keenan Allen and Justin Herbert is playing banged up, I still think I like the Jags defense anyways. And so with that call, I like the James Robinson. He's somebody that I don't have any, but in my main lineups, I wasn't that confident. I'm rolling 4 receivers in almost all my lineups. But in my more different, sneakier lineups, large field stuff, that's where I'm getting to a lot of James Conner as well. And the other call I absolutely adore is Alvin Kamara. We got Taysom Hill out today for the Saints, and that should give a lot more red zone work to Alvin Kamara. Mark Ingram is still banged up. Kamara practiced all week, and he's fresh off a nice rest from last week where he probably could have played, but they decided not to play him, so he'd be 100% for this week. So Kamara is one of my favorite plays on both sites. He should get red zone work, and also on DraftKings where it's point per reception. He should be picking up lots of those this week as well, especially with no Taysom Hill in the lineup. Dre, at receiver, you talked about 3 people who you really wanted to fit in. Who are your top targets today on DraftKings?
Well, it's more FanDuel. I guess I get them all in, but I really do like Justin Jefferson a lot. He's top priority. It's only coming at 12% ownership. Last year against Detroit, he destroyed this team both times, and that's not being talked about enough. The Detroit defense still sucks. They're not that great. So I'm significantly overweight on Justin Jefferson. I'm trying to get as much as I possibly can of him. I'd like Cooper Kupp as well. 9,900. I mean, I know 9,900 is a steep price to pay for him, but against Arizona, which is another team that does not have a really good defense, and not there's some good quarters, I think he's a top option that we have to get to. And just and Stephon Diggs, just because his price is so low right now for that Monday Night Football game at 7.7K. Just the production you see from the 2 games that he's gotten has just been ridiculous. So I'm really trying to see if I can fit all 3 of them in my lineup, and just go from there and just see what happens and fill in my lineup any way I possibly can for the rest with the other spots.
Similar strategy for me today because I'm looking at my main lineup today on FanDuel. And honestly, I think there's 13 minutes left to lock. People are still having some struggle with lineup HQ. Mine's working for me right now, but I'm not going to try and test it. So let's cover DraftKings and FanDuel at the same time, and just cover our favorite plays on both of the sites. And then we'll get to some QQs before lock hits here. Kristi, who are your favorite receivers today? And if you're choosing between the 2 expensive guys, Kupp and Jefferson, and you're only picking one, which one are you going with?
Yeah, it is. There's so many great receiver plays this week, and I think that's where it's going to be really tough. And there's going to be some good guys getting overlooked. I think Diggs is going to be one of the most popular just because, as Dre mentioned, he didn't get the price bump coming out of Monday Night Football there. But I think he's, even with Gabe Davis back, he's still someone that's very, very attractive. I like him. But I would say for me, Justin Jefferson is really the guy today. Like you said, he absolutely destroyed Detroit last year. Just an absolute great play. He's priced up, but he's certainly worth it, and it should just get a ton of production. So like him a ton. I think another guy too, kind of in that mid tier that I've started to. I've got him in one of my main lineups is Juju in that Kansas City game. I think he's priced really well. And I just really like him. I think we see bigger production out of him. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a guy that I really like too at the top. And so, Diggs, St. Brown, Jefferson are probably some top plays. But then on the tournament side too, I think he's going to go way overlooked and shouldn't, because, he's right up there with Jefferson to start the season. Like when you're looking in season-long leagues, is Jamar Chase in that Cincy game, and we could see him easily putting up 2 to 3 touchdowns, and it would be a surprise to no one at the end of the day. So I really like him a lot for a tournament. I think also some guys, I think as the week, I thought they'd be a little bit more popular, but again, going back to that Buffalo game, you've got Tyreek Hill, you've got Jalen Waddle. So, I think, getting both of those guys and even Diggs is a great tournament strategy, because that should just be an absolute shootout and a ton of fantasy production there. So like that a lot. And then, a couple cheaper plays, I think in that Cincinnati game, a couple of good bringbacks there are, you've got Elijah Moore, who's really cheap. You've got Garrett Wilson, who I think are some pretty sharp plays there in that game. And then, one last guy, he hasn't done much, but I think he gets red zone looks, and I think he gets a touchdown today, is Adam Thielen. He's just been great in the past, hasn't done much this year, but in that game environment at a really cheap price tag, he's someone that's certainly intriguing to me as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really great call. Somebody I want to touch on quick at running back that I forgot to mention, but I'm playing a decent amount of him today, is Cam Akers. He got a bunch of carries for the Rams last week, and he's somebody that I'm mixing into my Cardinals heavy lineups, because I am getting a lot of Cardinals receivers again today, Greg Dortch, Marquise Brown on both sites. And so that's somebody that I wanted to make sure I touched on as well. But I'm really struggling with the Kupp versus Justin Jefferson thing. Like, I think I'm maybe leaning towards Kupp, but it's so close for me, and it's not it. I really don't know how I want to handle that. But the other Stephon Diggs is somebody else I'm prioritizing. Devontae Adams is somebody I'm prioritizing. No Hunter Renfrow this week, and I currently, as it stands right now, have I couldn't decide between Kupp and Jefferson. So what did I do? I made a lineup with each one. And both of those lineups actually have Devontae Adams and Stephon Diggs in them, just because those guys were a little bit easier for me to afford. So those are my main targets. Those are my priorities. And outside of that, I'm really just looking to fill out some game script stacks. So like if I'm playing David Montgomery, I really like adding in Brandon Cooks. Amara St. Brown, yes, absolutely. If I want to mix in some Burrow, that's where I'm going to play Chase and Higgins. In my Chief stacks, I really like mixing in Michael Pittman. So it's really just about turning those stacks into game stacks for me. Gabe Davis is somebody I really like as well. Mike Williams is somebody I liked earlier in the week when I thought Herbert might go, but he's not somebody I'm going to touch now. And then the cheapies that I'm interested in are Greg Dortch, Romeo Dobbs, and Rashad Perryman is somebody I really like in tournaments as well, since we're not expecting Julio Jones to go. I think we can, there's nothing wrong with flocking to Russell Gage. I think he could have a strong game as well. But if you look even cheaper, you got Rashad Perryman, and that's somebody that Brady's been playing with for a while now. So let's take it over to the tight end position. We got Kelsey and Andrews up top, but then we got some great guys in the lower range tier as well. It looks like we got Lineup HQ back going here as we have it on the screen share. On DraftKings, we got a very cheap Irv Smith, and he's going to be the chalk over there. And then there's also some great plays: Zach Ertz, Tyler Higbee, TJ Hawkinson, Kyle Pitts, Dallas Goedert. There's just so many awesome plays here today at this position. Dre, who is your choice between Andrews and Kelsey? And then also, who are your favorites of all these cheapies today?
It's going to be Kelsey, just because I know it's going to probably be a little bit, just because it's going to be probably a little bit harder for everyone to get to. Well, both of them are going to be hard to get to in general, but I think Kelsey just has more upside here in this offense and more of a high-paced game. This in the dome. Kelsey's going to get the targets. It seems like Lamar Jackson's just been throwing to any and everybody, especially a Duvernay, which is fine. But I think this is just also the matchup against the Patriots is a more slower matchup too. So I'm just going to fade that today. But I do also like getting to a guy like Zach Ertz a little bit. Irv Smith, I think it's going to be more popular than where we have him, but I do like him. I like O.J. Howard a lot as a cheap tight end. I know it's going to be on with Houston having no one there as well. And I also don't mind getting to a guy like Dallas Goedert in my Philadelphia stacks.
I'm with you as well there. We had a quick question that I want to touch on because it's a priority at receiver. Cash game priorities on DraftKings. Kristi, I'll throw this one to you since you're playing some on DraftKings today. Who would you prioritize in cash games on at receiver today on DK specifically, real quick before we get your tight end takes?
Yeah, I think two of the guys that I'm prioritizing, I like Diggs. I like his price a lot, and probably Amon-Ra St. Brown. They're both priced in the 7K range there. Those are a couple of guys that I really like on there specifically. And then I'd probably throw, like, just someone on the cheap side. I'd probably throw Greg Dortch in there too in that Arizona game. Another guy that I like. But yeah, probably for me, it's probably Diggs and St. Brown.
I would go for sure Stephon Diggs. That's priority one for me. If you need a cheapie for cash, my favorite would be Russell Gage. And then St. Brown, I am good with as well. Yeah. He's nice and cheap over there on DraftKings. So yeah, I agree. St. Brown would kind of be my third priority there for cash. Now, Kristi, same quick tight end takes. We'll get some our quick defense takes in there, and then we'll close out with some QQs here before lock.
Yeah, absolutely. For tight end, I think there are some great plays. Obviously, Kelsey at the top, and I'm prioritizing him, obviously, in my Mahomes stacks that I have. He's always a great play. But in that mid-tier, there's a lot to really kind of like. Zach Ertz is absolutely my favorite in that Arizona game. He looks like the Zach Ertz of old. He's getting a ton of passes. He ranks pretty high for production in that regard. So I like Ertz. Dallas Goedert is probably the next favorite of mine. He's certainly been a favorite of Hurts in that offense, so I think he's someone to consider. On tournament side, I think TJ Hawkinson will get a little bit overlooked, and I think he's a great play in that Detroit game. Irv Smith is another great play. We saw what he was capable of last week, so I think he's a great play. You're going to see some of the higher price guys like Waller and Andrews, not carry as much ownership. feels like the mid-tier is where it's going to be a little bit more popular, which I certainly agree with. And one other guy I'll throw in there is Tyler Higbee. He just, he's getting targets, he's getting looks. And so, you could get worse plays in there. But for me, it's probably a lot of Ertz, a lot of Goddard, and Kelsey are probably three of my favorites this week.
I like it. I'm on the same page. Before we get to defenses, I want to touch on our FanDuel sponsor, where you can sign up for the FanDuel Sportsbook in a legal sports betting state to take advantage of their no sweat first bet for up to $1K free first bet. And specifically on FanDuel today, head over there because they're overlaying a lot of really good contests right now. The $55 live final is overlaying, and there's so many $1, $2, and $7 ticket contests that are overlaying right now as well. So set yourself up for next week and pop yourself in some of those ticket contests because they are wide open right now. Defenses, who are you looking towards today, Dre? The Jacksonville Jaguars are my favorite. I even don't hate the idea of sprinkling in some really cheap teams like in these high total games like the Lions and the Cardinals, just in case those games go low or there's some turnovers. The Seahawks would be the other team I'm looking at, and even the Raiders, who are nice and cheap, I'm good with. How about you?
Yeah, I definitely like getting to – oh, boy. All right, I definitely like getting to Jacksonville a lot. The Eagles is another one of my teams I don't mind having exposure to today. The Patriots a little bit. Like, I'm kind of just all over the place when it comes to defense, but Jacksonville is definitely my favorite just because I don't think what's his name plays today. So I've been trying to just get as much exposure I can to that. Sorry.
You're good. Kristi, I'll throw it to you. Defenses, who do you like? Are you sticking in the cheap range too? Are you going to this mid-tier where there's teams like the New Orleans Saints and Philadelphia Eagles that look really good? Or are you popping up top to the Tampa Bay Bucks and Buffalo Bills and Baltimore Ravens?
Yeah, defense is always interesting. And normally I like to stay away from the chalk just because, as a whole, it seems like DFS players struggle with picking the right defense, but I do really like the Jags this week just because they are cheap. They have done well. We're projecting Herbert to not play, and even if he does, I still think it's a great play. So that's the one I probably have the most of. But I do like the Patriots. They're cheaper too, and they can always surprise and get a defensive touchdown in there. So there's someone that I like. Bengals really disappointed last week, but they get the Jets this week, so they're carrying high ownership. I think they're a fine play. Would maybe throw Seattle in there too. They're another cheaper play. Carolina. I do find myself saving money though and kind of building that part of my lineup last. I would rather get my top skilled players in there and then kind of figure the defensive part out. But I would say Patriots and Jags are probably two of my higher defenses.
Yeah, I like it. I'm throwing in some. I'm just trying to answer some QQs in chat right now. And we're almost caught up there as we hit lock right this second. Dre, I know you were, oh no, we got 2 minutes left. My computer is behind. We're good. So I'll try and look at to more QQs. Dre, if you're still scrambling, I can throw to myself or Kristi Moore. I got everything locked up here. But we got somebody wondering, Kristi, this is specifically for you. FanDuel Cash, it's a 4v4. Are you ready for that?
I'm ready.
Montgomery, Cooks, Juju, and Bengals D, or Pierce, Diggs, Thielen, and Seahawks D?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. I think that. Okay, so the second one was one more time. It was
second one had Diggs, Thielen, Seahawks D, and Dameon Pierce. It's that one for me.
Yeah, it's that one for me too. Just because you've got Dameon Pierce and Diggs, which I think are really musts in cash this week.
Yeah, I'm with you as well. I wasn't on Pierce all week, and I'm kind of going towards him for cash games today, just because I like all of these expensive receivers. We got 1 more minute to lock. I think we are good for QQs because everybody is scrambling. I'm looking in the NFL Crunch Time chat for Discord, and I'm looking at the YouTube chat, and it doesn't seem like there's anything going on. Any last-minute injury news here before we hit lock? Julio Jones is dealing with a partially torn PCL. He's a legit game-time decision. Randall Cobb will play. Christian Watson won't play. The Raiders are dealing with their third straight different starting offensive line in 3 games. Your final list of inactives are Jacoby Myers, Taysom Hill, and all the most of the questionables we had this week, who we weren't sure if they were going to play: Gabe Davis, Dawson Knox, Alvin Kamara, Jameis Winston, J.K. Dobbins, Josh Jacobs, DeAndre Swift, T.J. Hawkinson. All of them are going to be in today. Lineup HQ seems to be back working if you've hit the refresh button. And we've hit lock. Dre, did you get your lineups in?
You know me, just got them in just a nick of time. I don't like some of them, but it is what it is. I couldn't change them, but I changed them whatever I could. But yeah, I did. I also was high on Chris Olave today as well. Olave, sorry. So if anyone was not high on him, and for secondary, because I think is that Atlanta game starts in the afternoon, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So DK Metcalf, I'm just saying it right now, he's going off today. He's going to go off. He's having a big game today. If you don't have me in tournaments and you need someone that to put you over the top, if you're close, switch to DK if you have enough money, because I think he's going to go off today.
So I'm curious, who are you guys' favorite stack? I mean, like in your single entry today, who's your favorite?
For me, it was still Josh Allen. That was my favorite, but I did have the toughest time getting to it, and so I ended up with by far the most Jalen Hurts today over anybody else, just because I built a Jalen Hurts lineup that I really liked, and it was my main lineup. And then I realized, oh, well, if I switch Cooper Kupp to Justin Jefferson, I can switch Zach Ertz to Dallas Goedert and get some correlation. And so I did some swapping there. And then I realized, wait, if I switch Stephon Diggs to AJ Brown, I can get a big stack and do correlation there as well. So I ended up with just a ton of Eagles and Jalen Hurts today, which there are worse things to be overweight on than a guy like Jalen Hurts. But the other teams I'm focusing on big time it's Hurts and the Eagles, it's Allen and the Bills, and then it's that entire Arizona and LA game. And then I did do a fairly hefty early only slate today where I just full stacked Kansas City with I'm in the minority here. Dre and I talked about this on FanDuel Friday. I'm not big on Juju. I just don't think he's actually that good. Find
out today, because I mean he has such a great match. We'll see. I mean, if he doesn't have a game today, you're probably right.
And so I stacked Hardman, I stacked Valdez-Scantling and Travis Kelce in a Patrick Mahomes lineup in early only with Michael Pittman running it back. How about you? What's your main stacks today?
Yeah, I'm with you. I really that Buffalo Miami game was just certainly a favorite for me, and so I've got an Allen, but I also have a Tua side of that too. I just think because we know where the production is, I like that. So got that one, and then I also have a Kirk Cousins lineup too in that Vikings Detroit game, and then let's see who I'm with you too, Jalen Hurts too. You just have to love that guy and do a game stack of him too. So. And then, Kansas City probably checked in as the fourth favorite. But there's like legit 4 to 5 really good stacks today that it's hard to narrow down more so than others.
Yeah, mine was Kirk Cousins, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes in that order. It's my top 4 that I have. I got a lot of exposure to Stephon Diggs. I'm most exposed wide receiver, followed by Juju. Then obviously the receiver Mac Hollins, I think he's a good option today and cheap at 3,300. I don't know if a lot of people are going to be playing him. I hope not. And Chris Olave, because I think he's just going to have a monster game and go off today. And Justin Jefferson, followed by Drake London and Pittman. So I'm trying to be a little bit different today. I do love Amon St. Brown a lot too as well, and I like Jamar Chase too. But it was just hard getting them in. Especially with the Joe Burrow stacks, because T. Higgins is just cheaper and it's a good option as well, and to fit everyone else in. DraftKings really made it difficult, I think, this week, which is good. It's good, but definitely something I will try to get as much as I can on FanDuel.
If you were to guess in the Millie Maker today, the difference on FanDuel in ownership between Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, what do you think it is? How much of a percent owned How many more percent owned is Justin Jefferson than Jamar Chase, do you think?
20.
Jefferson's 16% and Chase is 11%.
Oh, really? 16?
Yeah. I expected a lot higher ownership for Justin Jefferson today, and he got 27% Diggs, 27% St. Brown. And so it seems like people really did decide to stay in that mid-tier as opposed to go all the way up for the 9K guys. I'm pretty excited about a 5% Gabe Davis and a 8% Alvin Kamara. But these games have started. We want to watch. The people want to watch. We apologize for the lineup HQ errors. The people, I'm not sure exactly what the behind-the-scenes issues were, but I know the people are hard at work getting it fixed. It should be all good to go now. And we thank you so much for tuning in. Hit the like button on your way out. We thank our sponsor, FanDuel, today. Good luck to all of you. Good luck, Kristi. Good luck, Dre. On behalf of myself and my amazing co-hosts, that'll do it for today's show. Peace.